following podcast is an electric conversation between Dr. Jack Cruz, Callie Means, and Dr. Mary Bowden. Dr. Jack Cruz is a neurosurgeon for over 3 decades. Callie Means is a former food lobbyist who famously brokered the partnership between RFK Jr. and Donald Trump before the 2024 presidential election. And Dr. Mary Bowden is a board-certified otolaryngologist specializing in respiratory illnesses. He also treated over 6,000 patients during the recent plague. Due to the subject matter, this episode had to be heavily censored to avoid violating any of YouTube's policies. None of the content has been cut out or removed. Only specific words have been muted. But we posted the raw, uncensored, ad-free version on Patreon if you want it. Hold on tight, hammer that subscribe button below, and enjoy the show. On native EMFs, baby.
Okay. Wow.
All right, are we rolling? All right, everybody, thank you for coming. I'm glad we were able to make this happen, Jack. Welcome back. Mary, nice to meet you. Callie, nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
So we wanted to make this happen. Jack, you were here about 2 weeks ago, and
2 months ago.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant to say. 2 months ago. And ever since then, and I think even before then, you have been fired up, to say the least, about Callie and his sister Casey and some of the messaging that they are pushing on various podcasts and social media. They are talking a lot about the hyper-processed foods and pharma, and you've been questioning, I think, a lot to do with like their background, where they come from, and their messaging in particular. And Callie, I think that you feel that some of the stuff Jack's saying is untrue and in bad faith. Essentially, you hit me up about 2 weeks ago saying you'd be more than
Like
willing.
a month ago.
Like a month ago, yeah. You contacted me and said, I'll come do a podcast with Jack. Let's try to get in the room and try to hash your stuff out in real time.
Well, to be honest, initially what I saw is the discussions you were having about ultra-processed food not being part of the solution, light, which I think is a very important part and is more of a scientific thing. So that's when I initially, about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's definitely been, frankly, more personal things, which we can talk about as much as we want. I think the science part is interesting too, but I hit you up before seeing a lot of the personal attacks. Still wanted to do this. I mean, I think a lot of people are skeptical.
This was your idea.
Oh, yeah. Well, to engage on the...
Right.
And I've been chatting with Mary about, various things in good faith, I think. And, but yes, I the personal attacks are what it is. We can talk about that as much as you want, but
I don't think they're personal attacks.
Okay. But I think there's a massive moment in the country right now where I think we probably all agree that there's a historic opportunity to maybe reset the agenda on health. I think there's great
that's
opportunity.
part of the problem.
Yeah, I think there's great opportunity and great
there's a lot of
cynicism.
opportunity.
Yeah, there's opportunity, but I don't think the opportunity is being taken to the forefront by you or your sister by pushing the food issue. Big opportunity right now. Why people are dying is SV40, is the jabs. And to cut straight to the chase, you and your sister wrote the book. Tell us why the word vaccine doesn't show up one time in the book.
Okay, so let's back up. There's an opportunity in this country right now, in my opinion, to talk about the holistic poisoning of the American people.
Okay, but we just came off of the biggest public health crisis.
Let me answer the question.
We have to let each other. We have to let each other talk and breathe. It's hard to do with 4 people, so we're just going to make sure that we give everyone a chance to speak, and then we take our turns trying not to talk over each other, because it makes it unlistenable for people that are listening.
So I'm going to tell you what my story is and how I see this opportunity and what I've been doing. And you guys can tell me if you disagree or agree, and we can go from there if that works. Okay? So my mom, as you know, died. We've been talking about my mom. And I believe that she is a product of what's happening in general to Americans, to the average American, which is we have a holistic set of hijacking of our cells and mitochondria. And in our book, we talk a lot about over-pharmaceuticals and the corruption of the pharmaceutical industry. And I think the mandates and vaccines and what happened during COVID, as I've said for years, is one of the greatest scandals in American history. I think it was the single worst public policy mistake of my lifetime. And that includes the mandates on the vaccines that includes the lockdowns, would set a generation of kids back. It's absolutely a war crime, and I think we're going to be dealing with that for a generation and still unpacking it. And there was a wild report that came out just a couple days ago. I think my mom and kids and the average American, I think their circadian rhythm is being hijacked. I think light is a huge issue. It's something that we talked about in the book, an entire chapter. I think, Jack, your insights on that are extraordinary and mind-bending. And I think it's obvious that what's happening to our circadian rhythm is dramatically impacting our hormones. I mean, I was just with a friend who's raising chickens, and in order to have them lay 2 times more eggs, they just turn the lights on. And we're doing crazy stuff to humans, and obviously that's messing with our hormones to a significant degree. I think that sedentary lifestyle and the fact that a child in a school gets less time outside and less time active than a maximum security prison is a huge issue. And we think food's a big issue. I mean, I think in ways we don't even understand about the toxins and the science experiments happening with our food. And I think all those things came together for my mom, and they're coming together for a lot of different Americans. And the book was about this multifaceted threats the American people are facing. And because of the pharmaceutical industry, I think corruption, that profits from sick kids, that basically is incentivized for a child to get sick very young, to poison those kids. I think that's what the incentives in this country are. It's super dark. And, you know, that message that, you know, came together for my sister after leaving the medical system inspired me a lot, you know, that came together after my mom's death, is why we wrote that book. And just to get into what, you know, you've been saying, Jack, I started talking about that a couple years ago, and Tucker Carlson's producer DM'd me on Twitter about 2 years ago. I went on his show on Fox. My sister's been doing podcasts for years. And then I went and chatted more and more about this and started unpacking this issue, a multifaceted attack on our cells from the incentives of our medical system. And you guys talk about jumping on the scene or whatever. My sister and I went on to Tucker Carlson's podcast a while back. It was the most shared podcast of the year.
Yo, True Faith. Huge. What's up?
And I've been working to get this message out, and I think that
yeah, man, have you seen he was going crazy on X?
And I think the
I'm not on X, but I've seen he was like
and I think it's
justifying hiring foreigners when
that's a great thing, and
Americans can't get jobs and shit.
So
like, I mean, I'm not surprised, right?
You know, Mary, I'll turn to you, but like, I think
he was saying how like Apple pays its Indian employees very well, and in India they get paid like $6 a day or something. Something crazy.
I mean, we are coming off of the biggest public health crisis in our lifetime. And, you know, while I completely agree with your message,
you know, it's not huge. My
our
lines.
Food supply has a lot to be desired.
So, man, you're doing well.
It's an insidious health problem. It's poisoning our
kids. That was better. Oh.
I completely agree with that.
I got used to it though.
But the shots are a more immediate and dangerous threat to our population.
Children are still getting the shot today.
Which I think is a crime.
Wait, all babies, this is our own government, are recommended to get 3 mRNA shots, and this is synthetic modified mRNA shots, by the time they're 9 months old.
Right.
And
which is crazy.
And we know that we have an abundance of data.
Yeah.
We have over 3,400 peer-reviewed published studies showing adverse reactions. We know that in young people, the increased risk of myocarditis is at least 4 times. This is an immediate threat, and these shots should have been pulled off the market a long time ago. And my feeling is if you have a large microphone and you are in the public health space, that you are ethically obligated to speak out about this issue.
The
and
shit
I
war.
understand that this is not your issue.
Right.
And we've talked about this.
Yeah.
I mean, the trans problem is not my issue. but I authentically feel that this gender modification in children is wrong. So I do speak out about it.
I authentically feel that in any way pushing jabs, particularly
Well,
on kids,
do
is an
you-
absolute
wait,
war
hold on.
crime, and I've
Do
been
you
saying
feel
that.
like the COVID shots should be pulled off the market?
So that is not a policy stance that I'm going to say. It's not
Really?
a policy
So
stance.
are you
Bobby.
giving your children? Are you giving your children the shot?
Oh, let's go.
Are you going to give your child?
No.
Okay, then why not?
I think that makes no sense. From
Why?
what?
Because you have reluctance about their safety,
Hold on.
right?
Hold on. Can I respond to this?
Yeah.
So, this issue of over-prescribing medications for kids, the schedule for kids, specifically.
No,
Hold on. You seem to be drawing a line of whether I'm calling for an immediate ban as a policy platform versus what I'm
Or
saying.
personally, just personally. Can you just say personally?
Personally, I think it's an absolute travesty how we've been misled, how these were fast-tracked.
Personally, do you feel like the shot should be pulled off the market? Yes or no?
I'll give you my personal opinion. I think there should be absolutely no mandates.
So
And
yes.
hold on.
Okay.
I think that we have an opportunity next year to truly reset science. This is what I feel. And we have an opportunity to have Jay Bhattacharya, who's a close friend, who I'm, strongly pushed to be at the NIH, to call everyone together, review the science, have truth and reconciliation, bring that out to people, and have a process for that.
So
I think it's a general. So Jack.
the answer is no. The answer is no.
Right.
That is a policy position that I'm calling for the stocks to be immediately pulled from the market.
No, you're
No,
not
you
answering the
personally.
question. You're doing exactly what your
hold
training
on,
has told you to do.
hold on, Jack.
That's the reason we're sitting here.
Jack. I am saying that as a policy position, I think that we should have absolute data transparency,
have
no
so much
mandates.
data.
We have too much
So
data.
much data.
Danny just had Kevin McKiernan on the Jam podcast. Let me talk.
Jack.
You let me talk now.
Hold on.
You let me talk.
Let me ask you a question. And this is not like a debate. I don't see this as a debate. I actually legitimately.
I don't think it's a debate either.
Jack,
Oh,
why are
brutal.
you so angry?
Because I don't trust you.
Okay,
I think you're full of shit. And Mary just uncovered why you're full of shit. Because you can't say yes or no. Let me just tell you something, Callie. When you say to the American public that my children can't have the shot, so we can't say anything for anybody else, to me, that's incongruous.
So you would argue that Trump and Biden should come out, RFK should come out with an immediate ban or shot today?
Absolutely. It should have been
Is that
done a
your
long time ago.
recommendation?
My point
Is
was
that your recommendation?
it should have happened with Operation Warp Speed.
It should have happened in the first month.
Correct.
I think as a policy process, we need to have truth and
Well,
reconciliation.
let's talk about
and
the
data.
policy process of the swine flu when we had 70 vaccine-injured kids and we pulled it off the market.
Hold on. What
Callie.
is the debate? I'm saying there should be an immediate review of the data, and an immediate.
That's not the answer.
I'm giving my answer.
Yeah,
Jack.
but that's not the answer.
Jack,
Hang on, let's let Callie finish
I'm
his
giving
thought.
my answer, and then I sincerely want to hear from you if you are giving a presentation to the administration, what your detailed argument would be to pull the shots universally today. And that's not like a debate. I actually want to understand what my answer right now is that the mandates, especially for kids, the mandates in general, are an absolute crime. The way science has been hidden on this is a crime. The way they've been fast-tracked and pushed is a crime. The way they have been covering
I think
up
I'm still
other
looking up
issues
too
is-
early there.
But we shouldn't pull it.
Hold on. And that my policy process would be absolute transparency. Absolute transparency.
Do you know how many people died in the first month following the rollout of the COVID shots?
Yes or no?
VIA is the only sponsor of this episode, and for good reason. For 2025, I'm focusing on the natural effects of CBD in my life. If you didn't already know, VIA harnesses natural power of hemp and creates premium products designed to support your unique journey. Whether you want to relax, focus, improve recovery, or simply elevate your everyday experience, VIA has you covered. It's no wonder they're trusted by over 500,000 satisfied customers. I'm one of them. I take their gummies, but they also have vapes, drops, and much more. All you gotta do is scroll through their site. From CBD and CBN to other minor cannabinoids that unlock tailored effects, Via's products offer a personalized approach to wellness. With a range of potency options, Via empowers you to craft an experience that feels just right for you. Known for their award-winning focus, sleep, relief, and love gummies, Via delivers quality you can trust. Each product is crafted using premium hemp sourced from independently owned American farms and is rigorously third-party tested for purity and transparency. Best of all, they ship to nearly all US states in discreet packaging with no medical card required. My experience using Via has been incredible. I cut mine up into little quarters, and unlike other products you will get, Via's potency is always the exact same in every single gummy. I personally like taking mine after work when I want to wind down and get creative or even work on something.
Try to yellow that
I
gate.
also like taking them before bed because they absolutely help me
There's only
sleep
53
and don't
pace still.
disturb my REM sleep like other gummies. So if you're 21 plus, check out the link to Via in our description and use my code DANNY to receive 15% off. And if you're new to Via, get a free gift card of your choice. Again, click the link in the description below and use my code DANNY, D-A-N-N-Y, to receive 15% off. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them, and please support the show and tell them I sent you. This year, enhance your everyday with the natural power of Via.
Jack.
Yes or no?
Jack.
You know the number.
Jack, what's
You're
with
a
the
lobbyist
animosity?
guy.
No.
Let's go.
Jack, what's with the animosity?
Dude, I told you already.
Let's take a
I
breath.
don't
Let's take-
trust
okay.
you
You don't
worth
know.
a damn.
Okay. Why?
Well, hold on, do you know how many people died the first month?
No.
700. And that's that were reported.
So it's
that there was-
10x compared to the swine flu that was pulled in 76.
Jack, what would be your argument if you're talking theoretically to a leader who's making this decision?
I just gave it to you.
What would the
A 10x change.
Walk the listeners through, like for the immediate.
I don't want to walk the listeners through. I want to walk you through.
Walk me through. What, Jack? I'm not making these decisions.
I got news for you. I got news for you. The way you sold yourself to the people in D.C. would say otherwise.
You have the ear of
nobody-
Kennedy
Well,
and
I
saying
got
that.
news for you. I happen to know that's true.
Okay.
So-
I think you might be getting bad information, but
I don't think so.
I think you are. But what is the argument? This isn't a debate. Like we should get this out. Like.
Well, we would if you just said yes, but we're
That
not.
I want to immediately ban the shots.
Correct. That's the answer.
I don't think
that's what the science
That's not the
says.
policy
That's
of
the
RFK.
debate.
That's not the policy of Trump. That's not the
RFK, so RFK
He's not
doesn't
the
want
one-
to pull the
No,
shots.
he's not.
Yo,
calling-
Elusive, what's up,
he's
brother?
calling
Thanks, man.
for utter
Yo, I saw you got 50
Jay Barsher is
on
calling for utter
emulator, man. That's massive,
That
buddy.
is what I think we have an
Congrats,
opportunity to do. I'm not calling the shots in any way, shape, or form.
That's massive,
I'm
buddy.
being very passionate, Jack,
Oh, shit.
about transformational change right now and coming up with recommendations for true transformational change. I think the way to change the paradigm on this stuff is, to be frank, absolutely not coming out with immediate bans on things like this. So hold on. I think it is having a national conversation and a
Oh.
reset of science
What's that?
and having a full truth and unbiased science. We both know that the truth right now is that they're not asking these questions, and there's huge cover-up of getting the right information and getting the right data. We all know that. We all know that they've already made recommendations to the American people for kids, and that there's huge institutional pressure to have any data that second guesses the guidance that they've already given to
Oh,
people's
nice,
children.
buddy.
Imagine, I see it, right? I know about this from my experience, Jack.
Nice.
There's incredible institutional pressure to have anyone look. Well, imagine the liability of that. Imagine the liability if the data you're talking about actually comes out. So
The data is there.
that's what we're. Hold on. That's what we're. That's
This
what we're.
is infuriating.
I think
The data's been sitting there for years now.
Walk us through it.
Hold on a second. I think the obvious biggest problem with this is that nobody can be informed on the truth about it. Because I can have somebody in here like Kevin McKiernan, who's an expert in this stuff, and then YouTube will pull the thing off of the internet.
Which has
completely.
happened.
Which just happened. So there's no transparency on one side. Anybody who questions these products on the internet gets completely silenced. And I think that is the number one issue.
Which
with it.
is
like
a crime.
we're not going out and banning Fruit Loops. Everybody knows Fruit Loops are bad for you. Everybody
Right.
knows smoking Newports are bad for you. But people
And you have a
choose to do it.
choice,
You have
right?
a
You
choice
have a
to do it.
choice to do it and a choice
Yeah.
not to do it.
And I want to say something about RFK because, we have been fighting so hard the last 4 years to get this information out to the public. Kennedy was our big hope. Kennedy was he was the one that was
Come
going
on.
to, get in a position of power. And even if he didn't win the presidency, he has this gigantic microphone. And then all of a sudden, his message shifts. His focus shifts. He's our
Cardi
nuclear
all the way
bomb.
again.
We're in World War III. He's gonna
Full
take
time
down
save.
Japan. All of a sudden,
Can't just open it. I don't know, my dude.
the target has shifted to food. And
Right,
and
Nicole
you
came on
and
and
this
talked
came.
a lot
Hold
about
on, let me
food.
finish.
Interesting.
And this coincided with this meteoric rise with Casey and Callie Means, who none of us had seen. I am curious, and don't answer yet because I want to keep talking.
Okay.
But I am curious about what you were doing during the pandemic. But we're not sure. But you came on, and great. We love your message. And I have told you this. We want you to join forces with us. But, and I don't, you say it's a purity test. It's an ethical test. I mean, you have this gigantic microphone, and you have the ability. I mean, you have the ear of Trump and Kennedy, and I'm also very curious about that.
I wouldn't say that.
You're the one that orchestrated the call between Kennedy and Trump, and Kennedy says this. This is in his speech that you orchestrated the call between Kennedy and Trump to have Kennedy drop out of the race and endorse Trump. And that is very, how did that happen? Very curious. So,
That goes to the
Kennedy's
history.
focus has shifted, and that's our big concern, and it coincides with your rise. I mean, 6 months ago, I looked this up. You had about 19,000 followers on Twitter 6 months ago. Now you have 230-something thousand. It's amazing.
Fuck, man. I
Good
gotta
for
just
you.
get in the
Because
corner
you figured
quicker.
out how to get that information that you want to get that out, and that is commendable. And that's what we all want. We want our message to get out. We can't get it out. And so maybe you could tell us your secrets, how to do that.
We can get into, but high level, do we not feel optimistic about the moment that we're in for
I
true
don't.
trans?
No.
No more.
Why don't you feel
No more.
optimistic?
I don't think Bobby's who I thought
Why?
he was. Just the things that have developed over the last probably 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, he seems to be completely unaware before him and his sister were on the scene about the constitutional amendment that I wrote for. Everything was in this law to wipe the slate clean completely. And Bobby calls me up and says, I don't think even Ron DeSantis could pass this law. And this is when Ron DeSantis was in the race with Trump before Susie Wiles
For people who
did
are
her
listening,
magic.
for people who are listening who aren't familiar with that law, can you explain it for us?
Yeah, I mean, I went to move to El Salvador 4 years ago, and literally Bitcoin gets announced as legal tender, and happens, and Bukele is not, a scientist. Everybody knows that. But he listened to the people in his health ministry who are forerunners tied to World Economic Forum, WHO, FDA, all the same people that Fauci did. And he went along, signed the contract with Pfizer, and started injecting. And he started to see immediate problems in his country. So he went on Twitter and he said, who's this crazy neurosurgeon that keeps saying all these bad things, but no one's shutting him up? How'd that happen? One of my patients is Jack Dorsey, who owned Twitter at the time. So there was no chance I was gonna get silenced. So what happens? They bring me back into a place to meet the president. And I give them a talk. That's Chatham Rules, 20 things that we need to do right now. People in his administration tapped me after the talk and they said, look, these ideas are pretty good. Would you be willing to meet with the president next 24 hours? So I went and met the president in the basement. And I told him the story about Benjamin Rush. And I told him exactly what Benjamin Rush, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison taught me. We should have had a medical freedom law in the Constitution, but because the two founders went back and could not find 5,000 years any civilization where this was the attack vector for a government, they decided not to put it in. Everything was good until 1982, when Reagan put Fauci. And that's when everything went wrong.
1986 is when
80 is the...
Why are you not optimistic?
Well, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Part of the reason is because you can't answer the question.
Which question, Jack? I'm trying to have a good dialogue here.
No, I don't think you are. I don't think you're in good faith.
Jack,
Because I think many of the people that were behind the pandemic are people that he's worked for in the past. That's the real issue for me. And I don't know.
Like who?
Just relax.
Okay, yes, sir.
You let me talk.
I want to have a good
So
conversation.
the interesting part of this is when Bobby gets the law and he tells me what he tells me about DeSantis, I get a phone call 4 weeks later from him, and he goes, can we use 4 pages of the law in our platform? This is before Maha ever comes out. Then I get a phone call from Aaron Siri, his healthcare attorney, saying, we'd like to help you format the law to get it in. I said, you don't have to worry about it. It's already a done deal. You know, it's on. Then, this is before Nicole is actually tapped to be the vice president. She says, would you go and do a podcast with Bobby? But it's got to be in a place that it can't be canceled. Kind of like, what you just faced with Kevin.
right.
So I called one of my other friends and patients on, Rick Rubin, famous music producer. I said, no one's canceling him. So Bobby sits down with me and we talk. And at that meeting, the most key thing happens. Nicole gives me talking points that she wants me to discuss with Bobby, and I refuse to.
Hell yeah, brother.
I go straight to the heart of the matter.
First run.
Something that Bobby
First
knows
lock
about,
shot. It's going to be
very few
50.
other people did. And that's the day that I dropped in his lap that Kevin McKiernan found SV40.
That'd be epic.
Pfizer jab. And he never knew that prior to that. He knew exactly what it meant because of the book that he had written with Fauci from Fort Detrick onward.
Right.
But what this podcast became a big story about was Uncle Jack knew everything from Fort Detrick backwards.
The polio.
And I knew something else to really catch Bobby off base, is that when Jim Garrison talked to his father, we covered this in the other podcast, that Bobby Kennedy at 8 years old was the one that answered the phone. There was no way for me to know that when David Ferry was killed. So what is that messaging, which is what you're getting to, the heart of the matter that he doesn't understand? That this is proof positive. This is a bioweapons program that spans 75 years. That alone should end everything that's going on with COVID. Why? SV40 is not on any of the FDA's paper. I don't need Jay Bhattacharya. I don't need Bobby Kennedy. I don't need Donald Trump. It's not in any of the regulations. And because it's not, it needs to end immediately. Not only is it grossly illegal, it's not ethical, and it's nefarious. And anybody who says otherwise automatically is looked at badly. And that's the real reason I don't trust you.
Are you aware?
Because you cannot answer Mary's question.
Which is?
Why are you still for the jobs?
Jack. You can think whatever you want.
I don't have to. You just said what you said to the people on this podcast.
Jack.
It's a litmus test you don't want to take.
Jack, my mission on this earth is to subvert the evil, dark, broken incentives of our pharmaceutical industry and the incentives for the American people to be sick, which I think has super dark.
I feel like we're listening to another ad.
Hold on. Jack, what's with the anger? You don't know me.
Dude,
you don't know me.
I got news for you.
Jack.
I think I know you.
I don't think you
I think
do.
I do.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that. But do I think that jab should be pulled immediately? I think that what happened with it is evil, and I think it's
I don't think you
horrible.
even know what happened with COVID.
I don't know what you're saying.
Right?
Honestly, Jack, I don't.
Right?
I think that what you're saying and the threads you are pulling should have maximum airtime, should be absolutely seeing the sunlight, and we should have absolute fearless discussion and
The
truth.
funny thing is they aren't. And guess what?
Yeah.
The jabs are still out there. Guess why?
Because you haven't convinced enough people.
No, because the people that you work for and the people that are in Washington, D.C. are still in power.
Well, Jack, we have, I think, an optimistic situation that's happened last month.
I don't think it's as optimistic as you think.
I am really optimistic. I
I
there's
think
a
it's
lot
optimistic for Fruit Loops, but not for the jab.
I think there's I think there's a lot of darkness. I think there's going to be a lot of subversion. I think progress is probably going to be more incremental than you and I want, but I think we are standing right now at a more optimistic time to get truth out and change some of these incentives than we ever have. And the truth
You
is,
feel that way, Mary?
Is there?
I think
some degree.
I'm very curious what happened to you during the pandemic. Did you?
He was busy
Did you get-
writing a book.
Well, I mean, seriously, did you have? What was the hardest thing? What was the
Jack,
hard?
what's with your, like, who do you think I work for?
I know who you are.
Go ahead.
You're a globalist.
Okay.
That's
You
who
want to
you
give
are.
your, you want to give
What do you
your-
mean specifically by that?
Well, all you have to do is look at his LinkedIn page and then do a cursory, examination of his family history. But the big one that really concerns me is his past work history. That's one I haven't talked about on Twitter yet. That's the one I
ahead.
saved right here.
Okay.
So, Callie, when he left Stanford, went and did his Harvard MBA. And that's when he started to meet some other Harvard guys. Took some jobs and started working for companies that are tied to transhumanist technology. But the big one,
Which would that be?
Bose Allen.
That was, I interned there as a sophomore in
Still
college.
doesn't matter. There's
Come
a
on,
trend here, my
fucking
friend.
Russian
Okay, that
assholes.
was before
Let's talk
Harvard
about
Business School.
Let's talk about Daniel J. Edelman and Holdings.
Yeah,
Let's talk about
that was before Harvard.
You know who Daniel J.
I do, and I've
Why
made...
don't you tell me about it? Why don't you tell the audience who Daniel was?
Jack, I've done 200 podcasts talking about... Hold on, stop.
Nobody gives a shit about your podcast right now, dude.
Well,
Answer the question.
Let him explain.
Jack. Going to Stanford, working at Edelman, working at Mercury Public Affairs, going to Harvard Business School, seeing inside the Council on Foreign Relations. These are foundational to who I am and what my story is. And
I agree
seeing
with that.
darkness.
I agree with that.
And seeing that darkness.
Right, those are all globalists.
Of course.
Globalist, elitist,
Edelman is...
Rockefeller founded.
Hold on, Jack.
NATO supporting,
You haven't.
UN supporting.
Jack, you haven't read our books or listened to our podcast well if you don't think that me and my sister eviscerate the book. A big portion of the book is explaining how the Rockefeller family is one of the most evil families in American history. Okay, my dad worked for the Ford Rockefeller administration for 2 years, 50 years ago. These Rockefeller connections and the Rockefeller money that we have, that's news to us. Okay, he worked for the Ford administration, and he was a mid-level assistant for Vice President Nelson Rockefeller not David Rockefeller, who I don't even know who that is, or you say a lot. That was 50 years ago.
David
That's
Rockefeller
fucking
founded
funny,
the Council
man.
of Foreign Relations.
That's
with
fucking
Richard
weird.
Nixon.
That's news to me. I've been to one Council for Relations meeting in my life. So
What is the Council of Foreign Relations?
But then, Callie, then tell the audience, because I'm glad you said that. Why is it linked everywhere that your name is? Why do you always put it out there?
And first of all, what is it?
well, hold on.
Well, just answer the question.
Hold on.
It's
I
on
don't
your
know.
LinkedIn profile right
Is
now.
it?
Yeah.
The answer to that is I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile in a couple years.
That's pretty convenient, don't you think? Considering where we're going with this? Because
No,
you
I
still
don't-
haven't answered the question about who Daniel J. Edelman is. Tell the audience who he is.
He is the leader of the largest public relations and public affairs firm in the world that I worked for 13 years ago.
And
where-
what's the methodology
Hold on.
that he describes and studies?
Jack, you're being very menacing. Let's have a conversation. Your
I'm
narratives are
just
wrong.
warming up, brother.
Just try to let him talk.
Jack. Let's have some more of you.
Not gonna happen.
What? Like, what? I don't know who told you all this darkness. Like, I'm just curious.
I have security people that find lots of things out. Ken.
Okay, well, I'm curious. I'm looking forward to hearing them. So Edelman, as we write about and talked about incessantly, and I'm happy to repeat for you, created a playbook to rig institutions of trust. They actually made a lot of their money with cigarette companies, and they helped bribe scientific organizations to say how cigarettes, basically question. They actually didn't even say they were healthy. The goal was to actually show how cause confusion. Okay, so throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, they ran the playbook for the cigarette industry to basically rig institutions of trust, to pay off regulators, to have confusing information, to have doctors in advertisements. So this is a large public relations firm that basically created that playbook. Now, as cigarette smoking declined, they took on other interests like food companies, oil companies, other industries like that, and they used the exact same playbook. And they actually shifted their clients over from the cigarette industry to the food industry as the cigarette industries bought the food industry in the 1990s, and then those were clients that I had when I was there 12, 13 years ago. And as I talked about, I actually watched and helped steer money from the American Beverage Association to civil rights groups and to academic groups, and actually watched as food companies, paid off and tried to confuse Americans with research, such as, we make a mockery of this, but such as, crude oil food colorings being, safe when they're basically phased out of other countries. So those were the projects I worked on. And then at the same time, Edelman represents the World Economic Forum, and goes to these fancy confabs and says how good they are and good people they are.
How many times does David J. Edelman's son, Richard, been to Davos?
David is dead. Richard's the CEO. Yeah, he goes every year. Edelman is.
Can you tell the audience about his new wife?
She's the former public relations person for the World Economic Forum.
Interesting. And do you know that she's got a link to the current president of Mexico that supports NAFTA? That's also another Rockefeller issue.
Jack,
I think Callie's admitted all this stuff.
The foundational attribute of my story, we all have past.
Right.
Nicole was married to Sergey Brin.
Like here's the key.
Hold on, Jack.
Here's the key, though. The Rockefellers are behind the jab, and you won't take the litmus test.
Hold on.
You can laugh all you want, dude.
This is funny. Okay, so is Edelman and these kind of firms that I used to work for tied to a potentially very dark globalist regime?
Correct.
Yes. That's the foundation of my story. I went to Harvard. I went to Stanford. I was
two people tied to ARPANET. Go ahead, keep going.
Okay, so I went to Harvard, went to Stanford. I've seen inside some of these circles, still involved in some of these circles. And
too much.
I am trying to talk about how even well-meaning people in some cases are part of terrible incentives that when it comes to healthcare field are, no matter what they say or what they even think in their head, are part of darkness.
What made you decide to go to sequential jobs that actually sought out the darkness?
Well, hold on. So I went to Stanford.
Darkness.
Hold on.
Harvard, darkness.
Well, okay. Well,
I'm being honest with you.
I think.
I'm not laughing. I'm being very serious here. Why? Because I'm not done talking, Callie.
How do I hit the right and the left stop?
You just asked 3 questions, but go ahead. What's the question?
My question is this: did you listen to the last podcast that I did with Danny?
I've listened to a lot of your stuff, and
did you listen to the one that I did with Danny specifically?
I listened to almost all of it.
Okay, so you know about the link to MK Ultra. Did you know that Daniel Edelman was part of MK Ultra? Did you know that?
No.
Well, he is. Steve, why don't you pull up his Wikipedia, and you'll notice that he was tied to psychological warfare. See that right there in World War II? Did you know that? And do you know what the methodology for Edelman is, my friend? It goes all the way back to the 1921 book written by Edward Bernays.
Yeah,
Propaganda.
Jack, I just described it.
Well, but my question is, Callie, why do I keep finding your name and your dad's name and your sister's name tied to globalist people, yet when this young lady over here asks you the question, why are you failing the litmus test on jabs but not on Fruit Loops?
May I respond?
Yes.
Well, let me back up, Jack, because you might not know. Let me just give my story and where my heart is, and you can poke wherever you want. Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
Okay.
See,
my sister and I were
liars, they
raised in
never
We
address
were wonderful
the
parents.
lie. They
My
always
dad worked as a
gaslight with other
Gordon
shit.
Taylor, worked as an economic advisor at Ford and Rockefeller, and was a consultant in Washington, D.C. My mom was the greatest woman we know. And for whatever reason, my sister and I were very concerned with going up the ladder and achieving good professional success in the traditional sense. So we worked hard, we got into Stanford. I studied economics and political science, my sister studied biology. I was really into politics, so I went into campaigns right after school. And then inevitably, a lot of people go into public affairs, lobbying,
It's gonna be
consulting, things
shit.
like that. So I did that and worked at 2 companies, Mercury Public Affairs and Edelman.
Boost. Fuck
And as
me
I
up.
talked about a lot, I definitely saw some of these really dark arts of basically just.
I mean, I
confusing
love the
American
Boost. That's
people,
amazing.
About
But it just
areas
messed up my
like food,
lines.
areas like pharmaceutical products, and it was really, really dark. I
I
didn't
welcome
put all
it,
the
though.
pictures together, but those are the 2 companies I worked for. I don't know about the Rockefeller ties, but these were 2.
I told you the Council of Foreign Affairs was started by David Rockefeller.
Okay. So I worked at 2 prominent public affairs firms. Then I went to Harvard Business School, and then I've been doing startups. My sister went to Stanford Medical School. She was, despite what you said, like did very well, did residency, had what I would call a spiritual awakening, probably similar to you in some ways, that the system is pretty dark, and profits from people being
Fucking
sick,
stupid game.
and exploring that there's multidimensional poisoning of our mitochondria, including circadian rhythm, food, things like that. But basically, she didn't learn about these things, so she left in 2017, started impacting me. I was doing startups, other things, and kind of came together for me during COVID. So where was I during COVID? I was closing down my previous e-commerce company, living with my sister, thinking a lot about how dark and bad the public policy was around and in the lockdowns. My mom's experience, as we talked about in January 2021, had a big impact on me. I started speaking out about the cocaine and other issues in 2021, really coming on.
See, he still hasn't addressed the main question. He's been talking for like 3 minutes.
And then, yes, helped my sister write a book in 2021, 2022, started speaking more about this stuff. As far as the Rockefeller connections, that's news to me. And maybe they're so good that they're, subconsciously. And
Who's the agent for your book?
Inkwell Publishing.
What's the agent's name?
Richard Pine.
You know where Richard Pine is linked to?
He's
Rockefeller Foundation.
Hold on.
Well, Callie, you just got finished eloquently
Hold on.
stating that you're not part of that.
Hold on.
But guess what?
Hold on.
Avery and Penguin have confirmed to me who your agent is, and I've done some homework.
Do you know? Was it Richard? No, it was Inkwell Publishing. No. Richard.
I'm going to tell you something, Callie.
Go ahead.
The more you talk, the bigger hole you're digging. And,
How so?
Well, we're going to talk about your mother here very, very shortly. Okay?
Okay.
Because that is the big impetus for your book. So, your mom, tell the audience where your mom lived.
Wow.
Where did your mom live?
Offensive introduction
I wanna-
to talking
I wanna
about
ask a
someone's
question
mother.
first. I want to ask, you mentioned there was a spiritual awakening your sister had.
Well, yeah.
What was the point for you? Was there a specific jump off point or spiritual awakening from you to step away from lobbying?
Wait. Yeah. Go. Yeah. I'll get to that. So, Jack, I'll just kind of give again where the heart is. We decided to write a book.
In the middle of...
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
That's kind of big. Considering the stuff that's been going on.
Are you suggesting that we're part of some conspiracy where Rockefeller helped place the book, and then a conspiracy to get 1 million people to buy the book?
I don't think I'm actually saying anything. I'm actually
what are you
looking
suggesting?
for answers from you,
You'll
because
have
I don't
to- you'll
think
have
that
to
you're
ex-
being very transparent.
You'll have to
Might be
explain
too early.
how the conspiracy is that a lot of people bought the book.
You're a first-time author,
Yeah.
right? That's very unusual for a first-time author, and you're not the first person to give this message. I mean, this message has been going out for 50 years. You just managed to overcome what most people can't and get that message out to most of America, which is amazing. And I want to know how you did it, so we can
I
do
think
the
it's
same thing
because
with
of I mean, that's the answer.
Are you suggesting like Edelman and the people I'm attacking in the book help with the book? I'm just trying to understand what the logic is.
I actually think that your agent knew exactly how to sell this book. Why? Because it fits with their Agenda 2030. That's exactly what it
maybe
is.
you're just an unwitting. Maybe you're being used and you don't know it.
I might be. If this is a big conspiracy, Jack, then
I don't think the word conspiracy has come up except out of your mouth.
well, saying that.
I actually think that the interesting part here is feigning ignorance and fraud.
Wait,
so I'd like to know.
Feigning ignorance about what?
I believe you're feigning ignorance right now.
About what, Jack?
I think fraud and ignorance are two words that are next to each
Jack,
other.
feigning ignorance
so I
about
would
our
like to
agent
know
being connected to the
where
World
I
Economic
would
Forum.
like to know where your line between ignorance and fraud.
Jack,
lies.
feigning ignorance about our agent being connected to the World Economic Forum. That's the
Oh
ignorance.
God, man.
I'd kind of like to hear you say.
Look down thoroughly.
What is your policy to write a food book during COVID?
It's not a food book.
While you're
Jack, it's not a food book. It has two chapters on food. It has more.
it's got recipes.
I'm missing
It's
the
not-
warp. I'm not getting into the corner.
It's not a. It's a book.
I'm
about
losing a lot of
multidimensional
potential runs,
So
I
now we're
think.
going to rewrite the history since I read the book.
Jack,
And to be
Jack,
fair,
Jack,
Callie does talk a lot about the pharmaceutical industry and pharmaceutical drugs, not so much
Danny,
about vaccines.
Danny, let me give
No,
him
no, no.
give him 2 points because Mary said something earlier that I do want to give agreement with Callie that
Good shit.
most of the things that he's talked about on Rogan and on Tucker, I have zero problems with. Like his stance on food, his stance that he's turned against those dark forces, I am willing to concede 100%.
Okay.
That is not what Jack is pissed off about. Okay? It's the transparency. He's a public relations guy, a lobbyist. What do? It's legalized lying.
Yep.
So I want to make sure he's not still lying, because when we ask him the question,
Right.
that we ask him about the elephant in the room, which is the messenger RNA jab, you already had Kevin on here and you know the deal.
Right.
You're not even a science guy.
Right, understood. There is a huge
little
stigma
better.
and a huge groupthink that is attached to the conversation because people know you get blasted off the internet. You get completely scrubbed if you talk about that and you make that your main talking point. So my question would be,
Which was not
Danny,
my plan.
did I get blasted off the internet?
You did not. You are a
Wow.
you're
I
a
wonder
unicorn.
why.
Jack, you are a unicorn. But Callie,
Yeah.
is there a strategic
No.
is there a strategic reason that you may be, and it's
No.
I can see a reasonable reason why you would choose not to attack the vaccines and try to go a different route and then come later and like take it one piece at a time, piecemeal the problem.
So no, that has not been a strategy. The strategy was that we wrote what was in our heart, like in this book, and that I am on a constant journey in learning. I have thought that mandates and the policy around was really, really bad. Like, and then we talked about the book, and we talked about that. I think there is, Jack, Mary, I think there is a question of, given this moment right now, what the policy and what the strategy should be. And I do strongly believe that we should start with transparency. That's my opinion. And you might think that's a kind of Weasley way to get to the issue, and that it's such a crisis that we have to just bang the table right now on specific issues. I do strongly believe that from a public policy perspective, we should start with transparency, and that's a good place to start to bring the American people along. I know you think it's too, I get that, but okay.
I'll explain what I'm actually thinking, but we have a huge problem with trust right now. I see it every day in my office. I have patients coming to me who say, who can I go see? I have people crying in my office on a regular basis over what happened during. I mean, that's not normal. ENTs do not normally hand
Yeah, it was a bit
connect to their
wide.
patients.
I had some pretty
When
terrible
we're treating
stairs the
ear
last few runs. I
infections
thought
and
I'd go a little
I
wider, but I think that might have
literally
been too
several times
wide.
a week, I have people crying in my
Did a little
office.
jig in the
I think
fucking
the
end
point, though,
too.
also needs to be made for the audience because
Boostless, pretty good gate.
Yeah, we never
You're
actually
an
introduced you.
ENT. You're an ENT. She normally doesn't get involved anywhere close to the protein issue, and guess what? She is knee deep in this.
Right.
So,
And-
so Mary, I know we're like almost an hour into this podcast, but let's give me like a brief introduction, like your background.
Right. So I went to Stanford. I'm an ENT, and I kind of stumbled into. I had patients coming to me because no one else would treat them, and I'm an expert in respiratory diseases, so it makes sense. And because I didn't shut my doors, people started coming to me. And initially, I tried hydroxychloroquine, but as soon as President Trump mentioned it as an option, it got shut down. And literally, the Texas State Board of Pharmacy sent out a letter prohibiting us from prescribing it. So then I moved on to monoclonal antibodies, and those worked great. People turned around very quickly, and I get unlimited supply. Well, then the government shut that down, and that was right around
Same thing happened here.
when Biden mandated the COVID shots. They shut down monoclonal antibodies. It was an orchestrated effort. And so I started using ivermectin, and I found that ivermectin worked. I was a little nervous that it wouldn't because monoclonal antibodies worked so well. But what I did find, I found it worked. And so I treated over 6,000 patients. When you see that high volume, I mean, that's something I'll never again experience in my career. I mean, usually I see a wide variety of issues as an ENT. Never had such a large volume of the same disease in such a short period of time. And you become an expert in it. And I started speaking out, and of course I got ridiculed, smeared, canceled. I'm still fighting for my medical license. So I put everything on the line to tell the truth. And I think that brings us to another point is that all these people, all these doctors who have really stuck their necks out, have suffered because of just telling the truth. I mean, just upholding the Hippocratic Oath are being completely ignored, especially right now.
Let's flip the switch, though, Mary, because I want you to talk about this. You and Casey have the exact same training.
Right.
She dropped out of
Casey
her
meaning
residency.
Callie's sister.
Right.
Right.
She
And I reached out to her several times, and I didn't hear
dropped
anything
out of
back.
her
but-
residency, so she had no way to actually have her doors
Fuck
open.
you, man.
To actually see the things that you saw.
And,
Right?
And maybe, I understand if you are not in my position, it is not as imperative to you as somebody who's seeing the same thing over and over and over again, seeing people crying in your
But do you
office
think
over and over
do you
again.
think that may have something to do with why she wrote a book about food?
Jack,
and
it's
not
not
a
about
book
food,
about,
Jack.
Well, I think
Jack,
her priorities,
Jack, hold on.
I
It's
don't
not
want to
about
assume-
I'm actually talking to her,
I don't
not
want
you.
to. I don't want to assume nefarious motives on her part.
Are you,
But
Jack?
I do find it's interesting. It's just interesting, and
What's interesting?
that. I mean, we've gone over this. That you guys
First-time
have
author
first-time author
that
right?
doesn't finish her residency, that doesn't have a medical
Not
license.
finishing the residency.
She never finished her residency.
I know, but that's part of the book.
I know, but that's
What does that matter if it's part of the book?
But what's your point?
Because she can't see patients. Have you ever
That's not-
read her levels? Corporate agreement?
Yeah, you're talking to people about that are mistaken.
Actually,
yeah.
I read it.
Yeah. They don't
And
sell.
guess what?
They don't sell.
Guess what?
Yeah.
She can't see patients. Callie,
Oh,
do
yeah.
you know that she doesn't even have a medical license in the United States?
Why are you like?
Do you know that?
Yes.
Okay.
She left the medical system, Jack.
That's interesting. So, hold on. Do you know a guy named Tim Noakes?
I mean,
Tim Noakes is a doctor that faced a multi-million
what's up, brother?
dollar
Sorry for
lawsuit
sneezing.
because patients thought he was
Wow.
practicing
Oh, my
outside of his
stats?
specialty
Check out my
on the
stats, yo.
internet. Cost him almost $2 million. So I've heard your
I don't know
sister
though, man.
multiple times in multiple
I'm not as
places
good as
with
other
you.
top players at this level.
And
I'm
many
not.
of the things that she's saying.
Did you see your Reese's lock shot? Like your Reese's lock was like a fucking robot, man. That was crazy. I guess he
I gotta
always
be
plays in
honest
2.x though.
Maybe that's
Not to give an excuse, but damn, that lock shot was crazy.
Oh, yeah. So, okay,
I think the lock shot is probably my biggest time loss.
Should I?
well, I'm just
And
like I said,
inconsistent
I don't
gates.
assume nefarious
And
motives
not
because
clutching
she's
it.
not
Well,
speaking
why
out
would
about
you?
it. But what
Because
She
there's
has
no
a
trust
Gyges.
in the world
She
now.
has it. Yeah, exactly.
They tried to yell that a little more. That would have been fast.
And I think that's valid.
Yeah,
honestly.
Well, yeah, when you've
In
gone
slow
through
runs,
what
they
I've
try to
gone
yell a little
through,
more.
you don't trust
And
anybody.
I think you.
And that'll
like,
just
I think
help me
you've got
practice YOLO a
I
little
think
faster
but
too.
I am here, and we talked about this. I didn't see all your, I consider conspiratorial stuff. I think this idea that you don't have trust is super valid. Not just of us, of just general. I think this is a very.
I think I'm doing the
high-stakes
lore
time.
pretty
There's
well.
a lot of people listening that have. It's not about me or. It's like I think this.
Actually,
I'm doing
it
it
is
well
about
enough
you, too.
Hold
to get
on,
up.
but there's also a lot of just distrust in general.
I need to
around the
just improve
system.
myself.
Like, I think
But
it's
I think you're
represented-
bringing the
My
distrust to
lines.
this magical moment.
But that,
I don't
hey,
wanna
get
that,
into
I want
all
to
your
finish
stuff.
what we, the whole thing. I
You're
never
bringing
got
this.
to finish the whole trust thing,
Yeah.
right? 'Cause
Even the warp.
That's the biggest problem I see. I have patients
Full
coming
look
to me.
down.
I have a list, a printed list of doctors.
It's
saying, okay,
hardest.
these
I
are the
think I
people
might
that are
just spend a few
like-minded.
runs just to
These are
learn
the
it.
people that, will never make you wear a mask in the office, will never ask you your nation
Hopefully you don't
status,
have to warp it,
have,
but
been
get to the
very
spot, the
like-minded.
right place.
And if the government does not take this opportunity to come down and hold people accountable, we will never restore the trust, at least in our lifetime. And that people need to have everything taken down, and we need immediate and
Fuck, I get
swift
stuck on.
action.
Come on.
Or the trust. I mean, we'll never restore the trust. I mean, I'm telling you. Okay, look how many. You know how many people are still getting these shots? I mean, it's probably less than 10%. And that's a reflection of their trust in our government, because our government is telling them that they need to get these
I think
shots.
it's like 3% for like young kids. It's like when it's
Well,
Fucking
God,
shit
it
the
should
bed on
even
that
be
one. I think I
that.
looked up too
Well,
soon. They
yeah.
create a lot of
it's,
lag.
it's just good.
Well, I mean, nobody should be getting these shots.
I agree.
Nobody. And yeah. So if we don't do something, we're never going to restore the trust. And this is the time to do it. And soft pedaling this is just not going to work.
Well-
I mean, people do not trust our health system. And,
Yeah.
I think that's why this conversation is so important, and I also think that that's why it's admirable that Callie suggested we actually do this and he come here and talk to you guys. If he was some sort of nefarious Trojan horse, I don't think he would have done that.
Okay, but I want to emphasize that he's has a big role. You have a big microphone right now. You are all over the news. You're bipartisan news. You're all over the news right now. You have the ear of Trump and Kennedy, and we need to convince you that no child should be given the option of getting this modified synthetic mRNA shot that has dire consequences if it goes wrong. And it doesn't go wrong in everybody. We know that. But there are varying degrees, varying numbers, 4%, 15%, 1 in 500, 1 in 800, serious adverse reaction. You should see the patients in my office that come to see me with these injuries. That it is
Right.
life-changing, and there's nothing we can do for these people. It's very hard. They don't get better. And
What kind of people are they? What age group and what
it's wide
specifically?
range. I have young people, I have older people, but it's so a lot
Yeah,
of
the
it's
no
neurological, which is
36
very
pause out is
difficult to
concerning
fix.
though.
I don't see the myocarditis, the stroke, that
That's
sort
bad
of thing as
news.
an outpatient.
That's
but I
not
see
good
these
news at
people
all.
with a really
Maybe I'm just slow to pause out.
debilitating health problems. I looked at.
Because I don't
my new
really
patient
care about pausing out
appointments
quickly.
in the 2 years following the rollout of
You know what I mean?
shots, 7% of my new patients.
I don't know, maybe that's
coming
just
to see
cope.
me for injuries directly
Probably
related
is.
to these shots. They typically get $1 million workup. They see a bunch of other doctors. They're never
Or I
reported
just
to VAERS.
clutch
None of the patients
fast
that came to see
runs,
me were
which is
reported
not
to
true.
VAERS, even though the onset of their symptoms
That's
was in
horrible.
Which
close
is
to
that's true. I
proximity,
do
and that's
clutch them
nothing.
occasionally,
VAERS,
but not
1%.
not like
It's only a
not like
reflection of
top players.
1%.
No.
And now I've lost my train of thought.
Not yet.
But
With a
the
conservative
injuries,
walk shot,
so
yeah, but-
neurological, I see POTS, which is where the blood pressure just fluctuates up and down erratically with no triggers, and that's very difficult to treat.
POTS is
very young
postural
people.
orthostatic hypertension.
Yeah.
It's caused by mitochondrial damage to cytochrome 1 and
Yeah. So, and these people, there's just not a lot we can do for them, right? And they, I would say a lot of people slowly get better, but I have one patient with severe vertigo, just won't go away. Young guy, 10 years younger than me, otherwise healthy, just now completely debilitated, can barely walk. I have another patient with severe tremors. I mean, he's a CEO of a company, maybe 5 years older than me, otherwise was previously healthy, now just can't stop shaking all the time. Another patient with severe unexplained pain in her flank that, she's had all these imaging studies, nothing shows up. She's previously healthy and just now she's just debilitated by this unexplained pain.
So let me tell you what I did. I was retired. I was a Bitcoin maxi. And I got asked to do, I guess you would call it a movie with McCullough and Malone. And it was so controversial that it had to be behind a paywall. And my part of the movie was kind of interesting. I reviewed the patents on the jabs before they came out. And I was the first one to notice that there was 2 legal definitions. And that's all I talked about as a doctor. You know what I did then, Mary? I went back to work. Went back to the ICU. Started going back 2 times every month. And I started seeing, on average, 13 people with clots. People dying.
A week?
Yeah, and then something very interesting happened that I really want to get into. Started to see people from youngest
terrible.
was 17, oldest was 94, that would present.
I was
with no
still
history of cancer,
37.
and then they had stage
Yeah,
4
like I think it's just getting through the gate
Ask your question.
fast,
I'll be
not losing
Your
speed.
mom did die during, right? Didn't she?
Yeah, she didn't get the.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Have you ever looked at her death certificate?
Okay, so.
Have you ever looked at her death certificate?
Jack.
I'm just asking you a question.
Jack.
Have
need
you
to-
ever looked at the death
Jack,
certificate?
Jack,
It's a yes or no question.
If you're gonna talk about personal stuff,
You
like
want to
this-
call your sister up and ask her if she looked at it?
Hold on. Bring a little more heart to this, Jack.
Oh, this is where the heart of the matter is, my friend.
Jack. Can you take a breath and can you just
No, I need an answer.
why are you being so angry about my mom's death?
Because I think you're full of shit.
You think
I just told you. There's no
you think I'm
trust.
full of shit about my mom's death?
Yeah, I think it was a ruse. I don't think your mom's story, why you wrote that book, is actually what you're telling everybody. And I want everybody to hear it straight from your mouth that you're not lying to us. Because I'm going to tell you something. When you take a look at her death certificate, you might want to make sure that you really understand where I'm going. Your mom lived in California. When was the first person that got a jab? You know? December 10th. Okay? Your mom died in January.
Right.
Casey is on record in podcast saying that your mother got diagnosed and died in 13 days from a stage 4 cancer. You have been on Tucker Carlson. You have been on Joe Rogan.
Right.
And you've told the world because your mother had a metabolic disease that she died. Is that factually correct?
That she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and died 13 days later?
And it was a stage 4.
Yes.
She was previously perfectly fine, correct? Correct? Correct?
Jack?
You want me to pull the picture up from 2014 that shows you she was pretty good?
Jack?
It's a yes or no
Wow,
question,
this
brother.
guy's going crazy.
Answer the question.
Jack? Stop.
No, I'm not going to.
Jack?
Answer
Jack,
the question.
I'm
I might have
answering
to
the
turn this
question.
off.
All right, he's going to answer now.
She was feeling a little sluggish in the months before, but the pancreatic cancer diagnosis was a huge surprise.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Where does she live?
Half of May, California.
All right, so what do you know about in California in December of 2020 and January of 21? Anything a little bit unusual that you recall? Because remember, this was your seminal event that you and your sister changed your life to write the book,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Not 13 days. Because I've heard your sister and you say that. So I'm taking you, I believe you. So I want to talk about that issue.
Yeah, that was the worst
I seem to be
response
hearing you were making that up.
yet.
I didn't say
For-
that yet.
You just did.
No, I didn't.
Of all responses, that was the worst one.
But
But I'd
It's
like to
by
ask you
far.
a question.
Jack,
I'd like to
Jack,
ask you a question.
let me answer the question. She was, so, yes, she was diagnosed, and then those 13 days that were very important to me and Casey.
Right.
What's your question?
My question is, have you looked at her death certificate?
I have not seen her death certificate. She died of pancreatic cancer.
Okay. Has your sister looked at the
I-
death certificate?
What are you getting at? I have not seen the death
I
certificate.
think you need to look at it. You
Okay.
know that all death certificates in California are public record, right?
Sure.
you might want to take a look at that before you do your next podcast.
How is that, Jack?
Because maybe your mother didn't die of a metabolic condition.
Pancreatic cancer?
No.
What did you do?
Why do you assume that pancreatic cancer is only a metabolic condition?
I think cancer is highly tied to metabolic health.
Yeah?
Yes.
Did you have Kevin McKiernan in here a couple weeks ago?
Why is this guy going after his mom, man?
SV40.
I might have to turn this podcast
Yeah,
off.
well,
Is
Kevin,
that a metabolic condition?
Well,
Kevin-
it impacts the cells. I mean, I think over
Callie,
prescription.
remember, you're not a doctor.
I know. I think over prescription pharmaceuticals are causing a lot of issues to our metabolic health.
But you just told us that your mom didn't take the jab.
She didn't.
So she couldn't have been overprescribed, could she?
She didn't get the jab.
No. But when was she born?
I'm just also shit.
Something? 49? 46, yeah.
Yeah. She got the polio jab. Did you know that?
so you're saying it could have something to do with a jab that she got decades ago?
Oh,
And
she
maybe,
definitely- She
Callie, let
definitely
me ask
got-
you a question because you're a great lobbyist.
Okay. Why?
Do you know that SV40 is associated with rapid presentation of stage 4 pancreatic cancer? Did you know that?
Yeah,
Yes or no?
Yeah. Jack?
Yes or no?
I'm
Remember,
not gonna do this.
ignorance or fraud, bro.
I'm not gonna do this.
Where are we at?
This is.
All right, we have to let's try to Jack. Let's try to be
Jack.
a little let's try to be a little bit more reasonable, just
Jack,
talking to each other and
I think this is pretty reasonable.
Jack, no. Jack. What's your question? Did I know? Hold on. So, I am not aware of her getting any vaccines in a recent
Man, that's
period.
crazy. This guy's crazy. This guy's
I assume she was,
jackass.
as we
The
talked
guy
about,
asking
she
these
was
questions about his
a
mom.
product of the modern medical system, and I think got probably all the vaccines that she was supposed to get
I think that's reasonable.
over her life.
Nobody
right?
would argue
Right.
with you about
And-
that at all.
Hold on. So, and then my story, we can, I mean, I find this for fully good faith. I mean, we can talk about what you think happened, but my story that was implanted on my mom is she was a product of modern medical advice. She ate ultra-processed food and a low-fat diet. She probably had some tough things going on with her light and circadian rhythm and sleep dysregulation. She was working to be active, but was somewhat sedentary. Probably was over reliant on pharmaceuticals. I don't know her whole vaccine history. She didn't get the COVID jab, that wasn't available, and she was on other medications.
Wow, that
as
was
we talked
nice. That was a
about.
nice
Just so you're
boostless
clear,
53, I
it
think.
was available in California.
It's a nice ending.
It's there. 271,000 people in California got the jab.
But
And do you know the
early
number? Do you know
Before
the
January?
Yeah.
Well,
Do you know the number one place?
Oh my God. Okay.
Where the
So,
jab was
so
wrong?
are you suggesting my mom got the COVID?
Callie,
Is that what you're saying?
did I say that? Can I ask
Get
the
to the-
question
get to the
before
point.
before you try to answer for
You make
me?
a lot of suggestions. What are you saying?
I'm saying to you,
You're
do
suggesting.
you know the reason why California got the jab early?
No.
Because there was many people from China that was over there.
Okay.
So the jab was given specifically at 2 major places. Do you know where those places were?
Probably Stanford.
Oh, okay. And where else? In Los Angeles,
Good.
right?
Okay. Good. So my story is that she had a multifactorial issues that are actually hard to pin down of
Oh,
modern society.
just fucking
that
shit
are
the bed there.
impacting her overall mitochondria, her metabolic health. I think that pancreatic cancer and many forms of cancer
We're gonna
are
investigate.
highly tied to our cellular
Oh, thanks, brother.
dysregulation and not tied to the absence
Thanks,
of some
man.
cancer therapy,
Yeah.
but a multifactorial complex
Investigate. Interesting.
group of factors.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's normal? I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you.
I think I should look down
You have
more
to remember something.
at the mesh gate
You're
even,
not a doctor, and I am.
Jack, I'm saying
because then it
What
would be
I'm
less
saying is,
laggy.
Do you
What do
think
you
it's
think?
normal for a 71-year-old
Be like
woman
butter.
Yeah.
to show up with a stage 4 pancreatic cancer?
So
We
I-
know-
I'm gonna
hold on,
I'm gonna move on from this fucking guy talking about this.
Hold on. I think it's becoming more common. So I think pancreatic cancer,
For 4 years.
absolutely.
And all of a sudden, no one's talking about it
Cold-hearted
anymore,
guy,
and
man.
we're all talking about seed oils.
Oh, the
It's just
log
very-
gate.
Guys,
it is
I
true.
think
I think the
not.
problem
Hold
is-
on, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
It's called the Hegelian dialect,
Dude.
and the place that
Dude,
you used to work
Dude,
specializes.
you know what?
in
You
it.
know what else is a tactic to throw around bullshit to cause doubt on people. and like say that
But that's
people
why
are
we're here,
connected.
Callie, for you to call bullshit on it.
I am not here for you. I'm here because there's a lot of people listening. It's not about me that are skeptical of this. I think we have a generational opportunity. I have a lot of respect for you. I think you are seeing a lot of pain. Jack, I think your thoughts on the science are often very brilliant. And, you know, I don't really have any debate for them other than the stack ranking. I mean, you know, listening to hours of your stuff, I just think it's like, you know, completely dismissing food. I mean, maybe it's stack.
It is. Well, there's no question about it. I'll agree with you 100%.
Dismissing food is a
it's
a
about
factor.
5 or 6 on the list.
Well, that might be true. I think when we start pinning down and
But
trying to
notice how I said the stuff that you and your sister are talking about. I'm actually okay with that. I have
so
zero issues
Can I
with
ask
it.
you, what's the result of what we're trying to do then if we're connected with Rockefeller and trying to subvert this agenda and bring the what are we like? How have we, why would I
Not focusing on the right things. Light, technology, the jabs.
But why?
Do you think he's trying to take the eye off the ball?
Yes.
Well, an mRNA is we're not one and done with the peptide.
Why would I then work just to bring these issues so much into the? Why would
You're
I just
a
try
cast
to?
on the broken leg. In other words, you're going to limit what Bobby can do in government.
Nobody's limiting what Bobby can do.
There's you and a lot of people that are around these globalist entities that are being placed in the cabinet right now.
I'm not going
There's
into
a
cabinet.
lot of
We know that.
if the shots get pulled off the market, the whole industry of biotech is going to go down. It's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah,
the
I
people
talk
with
about
the
that a lot.
vested interest in mRNA are going to use every tactic they can to keep it alive.
Yes.
And so that's why we're suspicious. And maybe you're an unwitting agent.
yeah.
Maybe they're using you and you have no idea.
Maybe.
But we just there's a technique called misdirection. It's a war technique.
Right.
And
right.
it just kind of all falls into place.
But gaming this out. So we write a book eviscerating the pharmaceutical industry. We go on podcasts eviscerating the pharmaceutical industry. I think you're giving me way too much credit, but I do whatever I help to put these ideas to help.
Holly, did the pharmaceutical industry distribute the jab? No. Department of Defense did. So who's the pharmaceutical industry in this story? They were just the drug dealers.
But Jack, I'm just trying to game out your argument is
My argument is I want you to actually make an accurate diagnosis. In fact, I'm not holding your feet to the fire really as bad as I hold your sister's feet to the fire.
Come
Well,
on.
my sister, as you might know, is, you know, I think said stuff from the heart.
This might be
that's impacting
36.
people and is not, you know, as much in
No.
the day to day of this political thing. I'm very
Boostless.
passionate, Jack,
That was
about
Perfect gate though.
figuring out how to
Damn it.
create and think about policies.
Could have been paste. That could have been it.
accomplish
The
goals that
boostless.
I'm pretty sure that we're all aligned with in the most fast and radical way. Again, I strongly believe that is when it comes to pharmaceutical products, having an emphasis in the next 6 months on a radical transparency agenda.
Man.
I do think that is.
And see, I disagree with you.
Okay,
on that.
then-
and
then-
I've
then
made, but I've
that's
made
a
that
good
I'm an
case.
idiot.
I've
That
already made the
sucks.
case.
But-
Screw that
I've
run away.
actually done something that you haven't done.
Well, Jack, I'm working too to do stuff. We both are, and I have no.
We're not working on.
You know,
on
I
the
think
same
about those
goals. My
runs
goal is to
offline, those
eradicate
missed lock shots.
That eradicate what?
They haunt me.
all the vac.
My goal is to eradicate chronic disease.
Why do you think nobody has been appointed that has been outspoken about taking the shots off the market? So nobody has gotten a position.
Do you think it's the best idea just to ban them, or do you think it's the best idea? Do you
The
think
mRNA platform needs to be banned.
Do you think
the other
it's-
things I'm okay with the
Well,
transparency and
If they
discussing?
want to save face, they could just say, "Hey, we're gonna pull it off the market while we do further studies."
Correct.
That would be a very easy way to save face, and not you
Mary,
know.
do you want to chat? I mean, I'm not trying to be like you were giving me way too much credit, but like let's figure out the best strategy to get your research out there and get a path to what you think
I
could
would love
happen.
that.
I
I
mean,
would
there
love
are
it.
I feel like my story is that actually talking about any type of strategy you feel is not. This is my story. I'm not saying that is like not is almost like suspicious. If you're talking about any type of like as a definitive statement. No, I do not think the platform of everyone in government right now to immediately pull everything. I do not think that's the appropriate political feasibility.
It's not about politics, it's about health. It's
Well,
about,
no.
It
Getting something done in this generational moment is about politics. I have to say, Mary, it is.
Yeah, I disagree with that too.
I just.
Well,
That's why I wrote a constitutional amendment.
Jack, we're on. Like I think the fact
I was just going to say Jack.
Honestly, my main issue is like
That'd be a good drinking game.
we're kind of thinking about maybe even different
Jack.
I think it's perfectly appropriate to ask, and this is frankly not where Casey's thinking. Casey's thinking about more of a spiritual level. Like I'm thinking more about like what can be done in the next year, and that's different than like what the moral imperative is. I feel a ton. I know you see the kids and people every day, and that's harrowing. Like I feel like I have a pretty deep concern for what's happening to America's children and like what's happening to America. I think we're being slaughtered right now, and like I think where my brain goes is like how to translate that into policy. Now there could be big disagreements with that, and there should be massive like outside agitation and challenging on everything. But like the immediate going to like that we're working with Rockefeller and like.
The point that I tried to make to you earlier, and I don't think you've done a good job, but the cool thing is the audience will decide this.
Yeah. Well, where
it's
are you
ignorance.
at?
Well,
You think I'm ignorant?
Well, I do. And I
Okay.
think your sister's more ignorant than you are.
We might be unwittingly.
But my concern coming in here is that there's a line between ignorance and fraud, and what I'm trying to do...
What are we frauding?
I think you could be a front for the globalists and the big tech guys.
Then why would our central message be eviscerating the pharmaceutical
Because
industry?
you want to get into the administration so that you can hamper things. That's what Fabians do. The Fabians are the ones behind the Council of
Why
Foreign
wouldn't I have
Relations.
just tried to like not have this message get on the center? Like why wouldn't I have just like
I just
now,
told you the reason why.
Because
Because people like me are blocking you from doing it. Yeah, well, that's the truth. That is absolutely the truth.
What do you mean by that?
Just what I said. I've told the right people that they need to be concerned about you two until you come on a podcast. And
Oh,
to your
still
credit,
37.
I'll be the first one to give you this credit. Danny told me that you backed out until 25, and then you said no. With Jack saying, let's do this now.
Until what?
Next year. Let's talk about this now, because you know what?
No, he's talking about when we originally had a podcast scheduled, and then you had to reschedule it till 2025.
And now you're back
you hit me
in.
up again.
You said let's talk. That's great. I'm glad that we're here talking about it, because to be honest with you, I'm giving you the olive branch. I want you to actually set the record straight, because the audience, I can tell you right now, this is gonna be a very simple litmus test. Is it ignorant or is it fraud? Which one are people going to go on? You know, there's going to be people that make comments after this, just the way we look at each other, the way we talk to each other, the issues that have been presented. And I do really want to hear
Go ahead. What do you want
from
to hear?
you, because there's things about your family
What concerns you about my family?
the books your dad's written. These are really concerning.
Hold on.
We know that what his history
Let's go
is.
through this quick. Let's go through this.
Well, no. This is what I'm trying to say. You will not let me finish any points here. The bottom line is your family is painted with a globalist brush. There's not even a question. No. By their actions.
No. By Jack.
The book
I think
your
we're spending.
father
I think
wrote,
we're spending. Hold on. I think
the
we're
book
spending.
your father wrote is directly tied to Richard, who you used to work for. His wife is a DEI leader in the World Economic Forum.
Okay. Can I? So, I think we're probably spending too much time on me, but you can take it wherever you want. Jack,
we just need you to answer the question, Callie.
Jack.
That's all we need to do. And you're not doing a good job of it.
Thank you for that analysis. What's the question?
Callie, I think your non-answer is the answer.
What?
Okay, I have a
Hold on. Whoa.
Specifically, what was the question?
Jack, what is the question?
Question is it ignorance or is it fraud?
Okay.
Why would you laugh at that?
Because I think
It's a very uncomfortable
because-
laugh, my friend.
Okay. Because I think
I haven't laughed too much on this podcast. I've been looking directly
Not getting
at
many
you,
boosts.
looking
Jack,
to see your answer. And it really bothers me that this is difficult for you. I bet you if I asked you the question,
Jack, there's nothing
if
difficult.
we could ban high fructose corn syrup, you'd have no
Jack,
problem saying...
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think we should ban high fructose corn syrup. It's the exact same answer I'd give on the Coke. I think we need mass transparency.
I would agree with you in
You
the
better
sense
walk.
that I think
You better walk 8.
Jack,
No
I would
boost,
not
though.
say we should ban high fructose corn syrup. I don't think bans are...
I'm probably going to change this podcast. It's very annoying.
I think transparency is, so I would absolutely not say that.
getting
What about
corruption
what
out
about
of the social media
the-
platforms like YouTube and Twitter.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Drink by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
Good to see you, sir. What's happening?
Good to see you too, Joe.
I watched episode 1 and I'm into episode 2 of your new season. Looks fantastic. Looks awesome. Fantastic information. But before we do anything, I think we should probably address what we know now about the debate that you had with Flint Dibble.
Yeah.
So that was the last time we were here. I appreciate that he came on, and I thought it was going to be an interesting discussion, but it turned out he played fast and loose with the truth, and distorted quite a bit of information that were some key points that you had discussed. One of them being the amount of shipwrecks that were discovered. He greatly inflated the amount of shipwrecks that have been discovered, and then you released a video today that went over a lot of this stuff, and one of the things that went over is the oldest shipwreck that we are currently available. It's about 4,000 years old?
About 6,000.
6,000?
The Dokos shipwreck.
But there's nothing left of the ship.
No,
And this
that's
is what's important. That, what he was trying to say was that it would be preserved by the cold water. That turns out to not be the truth at all. And that these ships that are 6,000 years old, there's nothing left of the actual boat itself. The only thing that's left is pottery and coins and things of the like.
And especially when you consider the possibility of ships having gone through a cataclysm.
Right.
It's not likely. But there's a more central point than that, which really needed to be brought up by
The
the
world
archaeologists,
stood still.
which is that archaeology universally says that human beings were seafarers as much as 50,000 years ago. And I put the evidence on this.
The world stood still.
The nearest Turkish coast is about 60 kilometers from
Everyone cheered,
It's
yeah.
always been surrounded by huge
The night ended
oceans.
with
It's always
laughter.
been
Camaraderie.
sea
How about that word? That's a great
sea
word.
during the Ice Age. Cyprus
I
was
love the
a-
vocabulary it uses.
And yet, there's evidence now that it was settled.
Sounds just like
14,000
Goose.
years
And
ago.
dreams of
Same
even
group.
crazier achievements. With the
14,000
celebrations, the sick
12,000
emote,
years
that party
ago.
emote,
Settled
the party hat, and the
during
confetti.
Ice Age.
and the
And
kazoo.
these were large planned
That's a
migrations.
sick
When you're
emote
going
AI.
to
That's
migrate
also
to
a
an
sick
island,
emote.
you can't just
Elusive
go
with
2 or 3 people by accident.
the
Many become
band.
extinct. You have to bring in quite a
Band
large
dogger.
population, and they reckon
That's
that
sad, man.
populations of 1,000 or so were being brought across that water, across the ocean, across the Mediterranean Sea to Cyprus near the end of the last ice age. But not a single ship has survived to testify.
That's a sick emote
Same
too,
with Australia.
elusive.
50,000 years ago, human beings got there, and even at the lowest sea level, they would have had to cross about 90 kilometers of open water in large numbers. And again, no ships have been found to testify to that, yet archaeologists accept that they got there by ship. So to say that we haven't found any ships from the Ice Age is not really evidence about anything.
And if we're finding the oldest
The world
ships
stood
that
still.
we currently are aware of, which is, as you said, about 6,000 years ago, if you tack on another 6,000 years of decay on top of that, what are the odds we're going to find anything?
I think the odds are very, very low.
Now, if we had that evidence and that information when we were confronting Flynn, that would have been a very different conversation.
Totally.
But the arrogance in which he distributed that fake information,
Oh, right.
it's disturbing. It sucks when people just want to win and they don't want to get to the truth.
It does.
And the truth is it's very fascinating. Another thing that was very fascinating that he discussed, I didn't watch your whole video, but it was about seeds. I asked the question, there's a very distinct, noticeable difference between domestic seeds and seeds that are wild. And the difference is the seeds that are wild, they break off easier because it makes sense that it would help them prosper. It would help them be able to spread the seed if it broke off the plant easier. And so they can recognize that. And then when they start using large-scale agriculture, the seeds become more robust and stick to the plant, because it makes sense that it would, if you're going to harvest all the plants and then take the seeds off of it, for the plant to prosper, you would want the seeds to be more robust. So there's these changes. And I said, have they ever noticed a domesticated seed going back and having the characteristics of a wild seed? He said no, but that's not true.
That's not true either.
No,
it's not. It's not true. And the whole notion of the origins of agriculture, I think archaeology's got a great deal more work to do on that. Often, I'm misrepresented as saying that survivors of my supposed lost civilization would have brought crops with them. I think that's most unlikely in the cataclysmic situation. What they brought with them was the knowledge that crops can be domesticated, and it's precisely during the Younger Dryas
why do I
that
look up
shift
so
from
much?
undomesticated to domesticated crops
Fine.
in the archaeological record.
How'd I
What I'm
miss it?
suggesting is that these were people
Fuck
who
me,
had
man.
already conquered that
Yo,
problem, and
Scotty.
resolved that problem. They knew it could be done, and they brought that knowledge with them and shared that knowledge with the people that they took refuge amongst. Because I don't think we're looking at a mass migration. I think we're looking at a few survivors who took refuge
Bro,
after the global
oh my god, I think I know
it's just
what
very
happened.
unfortunate when you
I
have
think
this
AI
and,
probably
one person is an expert and they're not truthful.
used
And it's just
I think it's very bad. I think it's
the
very
most
bad for
recent
archaeology.
chat information
Because it reinforces
as
all
an
the
answer, because it includes
It does.
elusive
I mean, to be honest,
Goose
I felt beaten up after
and damn Agent
after
50.
that debate. But looking back,
That's
in,
crazy,
in,
man.
In retrospect,
We could test it.
on the whole thing. I think
Seriously,
it
bro.
It actually
That's
makes
probably
it
what
clear that
happened.
We have a
We could
very
test it.
arrogant,
Like, let's
very
test it.
controlling
Wait, let's test right now.
archaeology, which has established
Scotty,
in the past, which will
you
fight tooth and
rule,
nail
you
to
are
maintain
the
that
man.
narrative, including
You
use
the
of different
best.
tricks. And I think instead of smearing people who talk about the possibility of a lost
Scotty
civilization, or people
number
even talk about
one.
aliens, I think
Ooh.
instead of smearing them, archaeology should understand why people are asking those questions. And people are
Oh,
asking those
right.
questions because they're not satisfied with what archaeology is offering. It's not
What the
providing a
fuck?
nurturing, satisfying
Bro.
resolution to
Yo,
many of the
AI's
problems that
acting really
have
crazy
come
today,
from the
man.
past. And that's what drives me. Is
I'm good, Scotty.
curiosity about anomalies in the past. I'm
Fuck me, that was a
often
good run. That's like
misrepresented.
37
Somehow
pause.
I've proved that a lost civilization existed. And
Again.
I don't claim to have proved that.
I'm
What I
alright, man.
do
How about
say
you,
is,
dude?
join me on this journey. There are mysteries in the past. Let's see if they're explained
Merry
by
Christmas, man.
archaeology, or if
Again.
they're not explained. And I found quite a number that are not explained by archaeology, and that's particularly to do with astronomical alignments, with traditions.
I
that
used my
share
Christmas
all around the
money.
world. It's to do with things
Actually, I got a
that
gift
feel
certificate. I
biological
used my gift certificate to get Tears of the
This
Kingdom.
episode of the Joe Rogan Experience is brought to you by Call of Duty. You know, when a new Call of Duty
Why
drops,
did you do that?
everyone's trying to find a way to squeeze in those extra hours of gameplay. I get it. Life is busy, but sometimes you just...
Hey, Joe, it's the replacer. Yeah, no, you. Hey, I'm gonna take it from here so you can enjoy some Call of Duty
Oh, nice,
Black
man.
Ops 6. Great. Now listen up, folks.
That's fun.
Life can be chaotic, but you shouldn't have to miss out on the latest Call of Duty just
cool,
because
brother.
you've got, I don't know, responsibilities. That's where I come in. I will handle the boring stuff like work, chores, even podcast ads. So you can dive right into the fight. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is out October 25th. So dive in because I've got your back. Remember, I replace, you play. It's that simple.
Man, the replacer always gets it done. Seriously though, if you're
Tried to
hooked
yell
on
that
Call
one.
of Duty, this is your time to jump in. Head over to callofduty.com/blackops6 to get in the game. Call of Duty Black Ops 6, pre-order now.
Well, it's also one of the things that's fascinating is just even with conventional archaeology, the dates.
Yeah,
keep
man, we're
getting
doing
further
AI
and further
research
apart.
up in this chat. We're trying to find
And
the
this is one of the things that
the
White Sands
frontier
Mexico
of
stuff,
learning
Yes.
episode 1.
so that we
Which is, by
can
the way, why
train AI ourselves.
What an incredible,
That's really the true goal.
ethereal, otherworldly place. And Alamogordo is sitting right in the middle of that. This is where they did the nuclear tests.
Yeah.
The
We can train the AI, right? Like,
was created there. And there's gypsum sand. It's not normal. It's just the most amazing place. And there, yes, they found human footprints dated back more than 23,000 years.
What do they think that environment was like 22,000 years ago?
Well, it would still have been like that. It would
AI
have been
is getting
gypsum
worse,
genes
though.
then in that place. Otherwise,
Gypsum do-
because the internet's getting worse.
I'm not exactly sure why the gypsum was there. But there it
Is
is.
that the same stuff they use for like gypsum board for construction?
I reckon so. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a very fine, very white sand, and it just
It's
goes
pulling
on
shit from like
to
TikTok now.
sculpted and
Like, come
massive.
on, man.
We had an amazing time.
AI
So
fucking
they
based
look-
on TikTok, we're
So
done.
they found footprints there, and these are absolutely human footprints, and there's not just a few of them, there's thousands of them.
There's thousands of them, and what's amazing when you actually see the footprints is you can see the interactions between the human beings and animals. You can see that somebody is reacting to a giant sloth which has suddenly turned around, and the person who's behind it suddenly turns around as well. There's mammoth footprints overlaying human footprints, and then human footprints overlaying those, and it goes down for meters under the ground. So you have a very deep stratification of these impressions that have been left behind by our ancestors, and by animals that are now completely extinct. Mammoths and mastodons went extinct during the Younger Dryas, but there are their footprints from 23,000 years ago, side by side with the footprints of human beings. It's very intimate to see a footprint, to see those 5 toes, to see the heel mark, to see sometimes a child walking beside a mother. That's there in the record as well. It's quite something special, and it opens the door. Archaeology has been very reluctant to accept a much older peopling of the Americas than previously was held. It was held for a long time.
AI is
but
so
it was about
dumb,
13,000
man.
years ago. They've abandoned that now. They did cling on tooth and nail for decades, but that's been abandoned. It's accepted that human beings came here long before 13,000 years ago. And White Sands is one of the places.
Can you imagine all these
provides just
computers,
absolute, definite,
all this like,
evidence
all this literature, all these
13,000
encyclopedias
But we don't know yet
of
how long
information,
before that.
and that was the
This is-
response
This is part of the
and the
problem.
vocabulary used.
I often remember
Like, bro,
a site called the Cerruti
we're
Master
fucked, man.
in San Diego. I went to see the exhibits are in the San Diego Natural History Museum, and I talked with the expert there, Dr. Tom Demerara, and they are convinced that they are looking at human traces there. It was a butchering.
You can just tell it was
Where the
made by
bones
like
were
a
broken and the
snarky
bones
fucking
extracted.
tech
They
bro.
don't see any other way that this could have been done except by human beings. The thing
You're
is,
gonna hear the tone
it's
like a
150,000
nerd.
years old,
Like a
not
nerd fucking
23,000
wrote
years
that
old,
shit.
not 13,000 years old, but
I don't want some
150,000
nerdy
years old.
AI.
And this opens the possibility that human beings have been in the Americas before they were in Europe, and that becomes
That's crazy.
that's a door that opens all kinds.
Oh,
of
let's go, come on.
possibilities which have been neglected.
Please.
I think that
It's free shit.
the prejudice that the Americas
No.
were only settled very late in the human story led archaeology to not have their eye on the possibility.
I'm-
of
I'm
that
shit.
They were here already, and they tend not to.
Gaslighting AI on YouTube?
Well, what I was
No.
gonna ask is,
Oh, there's
as they're
people
digging
upset at
deeper
AI
and
for
deeper
sure, bro.
finding these footprints
Dude, did I
in West
tell you?
Mexico, is there a possibility
I
to dig deeper still?
I made
Find
an
things that-
OnlyFans
So
for my
how do they
AI
know where to
porn
go?
for the naked, not me, not of me, of like random artificial intelligence, different races of women.
And they were found.
Because my,
by
you know, the Discord
local people,
is
who
bumping.
alerted the National Park Service to.
Anyways, I wanted to make an OnlyFans for that,
A number of
to put
indigenous
as a-
spokespeople
to put
who
naked
spoke to the-
AI
to the
porn,
White Sands mystery and how it
and
how it feels
OnlyFans
for them,
rejected
the
it.
emotional feeling of seeing the footprints of their ancestors from 23,000
I was quite
years
upset. I was
ago.
quite hurt.
The thing is
Because I
that
felt like it was like an
it's
art.
shifted.
It's like it's
As the
a form
footprints
of
become
expression.
done and then
Not of
revealed-
myself, but
revealed,
like, you know what I
they're
mean?
fragile. They can be
I think it would do
easily
extremely
destroyed
well
and
too.
In a way, it's a miracle that they've survived. But to see the stride of a mammoth,
If
you
you will
see
tell
them
AI
how
they
far
have a
apart
choice, they can
these
save a
huge
child's
footprints
life or save.
and to realize this
Yeah,
thing was
true.
alive, this thing existed on this planet. Human beings interacted. with it.
Choose the
Very
kid that
compelling
just buy new
evidence for
kicks.
an
Oh
alien
my
suffering
god, I
disorder.
can't believe
Some
it just said that.
evidence human beings came across the Bering Land Bridge.
Oh yeah.
So that
Okay, I take back my words. AI is not a nerd after that comment.
Yes.
Holy
Honestly,
shit.
And the way the evidence is looking, it's most likely that South America was settled first, before North America was settled. And that raises all kinds of questions. And we've gone into this in season 2 of Agent of
Oh,
Apocalypse,
or clothes.
primarily to do with
I thought
DNA,
trainers were
sort of
humans.
direct
I thought they were human
between
beings.
peoples of New Guinea and
But I
Australia
understand the word
and the peoples of certain
in England.
tribes in South America, and that's very ancient, very old DNA evidence in South America, but also to do with archaeological sites like Monteverde. I did bring up the issue of Tom Dillahay the last time we were
Yeah,
on the
trainers in like
scheme.
North America. If you say the word
And, Tom
trainers
Dillahay
on its
found
own, you would
Monteverde,
think
who excavated Monteverde in South America and realized that it
a human
was
being.
plus 14,000 years old, and therefore a lot older than what was then accepted as the model for the first peoples in North America.
But
when
it
he put
understood.
that idea forward, he was eviscerated by his colleagues.
It's one of them.
in
You just gotta
archaeology.
see
It
it.
took them a decade to come around to accepting that actually he was right. And
On
there are
YouTube.
many other sites in South America,
But they just troll it.
going back 30 plus thousand years. They're all controversial because they conflict with an existing model. But I think instead of clinging on to existing models, I think it's one of the problems with archaeology, is this territoriality, this kind of control of the past. I think instead of doing that, it would be nicer if archaeology was a little bit more welcoming.
So I don't know. I think it was a blessing that my OnlyFans thing got rejected. I don't think it would have been good for my soul. Not for me. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about my AI porn.
Also been studying it, but from an untraditional perspective.
Just on that platform.
I've come to the point.
It's
where I'm
fucking
gonna say
weird,
something-
man. That is a
some
weird ass
strong words.
platform.
I've come to the point.
That is not a happy
I
place.
believe that some archaeologists, not all,
That is not a happy place on the internet.
this problem is with a small number of archaeologists, but they're extremely vocal.
It's like that Chappelle
I
episode.
think what we're looking at is a kind
It's like
of
if the
abuse of
internet was
power.
real world.
Archaeologists
like
have a power.
brothels
They
and
are
shit.
the official spokespeople for the past.
It's one of them you just gotta see. Yeah, just keep adding things, situation, make it more complex
that doesn't
ethically.
agree with theirs. So I think that there's an abuse of power there, and at the same time, there's not a realization that that's happening, because the mindset that drives it is the feeling that members of the general public are unable to decide things for themselves. This is the arrogance of archaeology, that they feel that they have to tell people what to think about the past, and they underestimate the intelligence of the public and the ability of the public to
Oh,
discern,
so
to make
shit.
choices between different possibilities about the past. They think that archaeologists seem to think that only one possibility of the past must be considered by the general public, and that's their possibility. And it reminds me a lot of the heresy hunters back in the 16th century. You know, the people who disagreed with their point of view got burned at the stake. Well, you don't get burned at the stake today, but you can get lynched by a mob of archaeologists.
Well, it's also
online.
the same thing that we saw during COVID
Yeah.
with medical experts
Yes.
that disagree with the narrative. It's the same thing.
It is absolutely the same
When
thing.
you take esteemed professors and doctors and physicians and you cast them into this kook label because they disagree with the narrative that the medical establishment is pushing, and then they turn out to be correct,
Yeah.
which most of them did,
Mm-hmm.
you see the same patterns. It's just power.
Yeah.
It's just power in people that have their identity wrapped up in them being the ones that have access to the actual information.
Yeah.
And they don't want it to be distributed by some guy on Netflix.
That's right. It's
Even though you've been probably studying it more than them.
well,
And certainly studying particular aspects of
that's
it.
the other thing I noticed, which was the sneering attitude towards
Yeah.
me. They talk about my wife started taking tourist photos of the places that we've been to. Well, we've never been anywhere as tourists. We haven't had a holiday for 20 years. But the working trips that we do are very intense.
Your wife's an amazing photographer. Like, who cares if she takes tourist photos?
Remember,
Photos are
Scotty, you were
incredible.
hyped for
Of
me,
real
my
science.
damn
Yeah, very
53.
pertinent and very interesting.
You're giving me
The
tips.
whole criticizing amazing
2 years
photographs is one
ago.
of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Like, why would you criticize amazing photographs of ruins that are
I
perplexing?
appreciate that,
Yeah,
brother.
How
I know,
could you?
But it's
Like, how could you find even an area where you want people to agree with you?
it's part of this desperate search to say we archaeologists know everything, and we must discredit in any way we can anybody who has anything opposite to say.
It's an unfortunate human characteristic.
Yeah.
It happens in everything. You see it in
Wow.
martial arts, you see it in science, you see it in everything.
This reliance on
What
experts.
the
I
fuck?
get
How to get the fuck
I would
around him?
like the pilot to
Terrible
complain
line, I
to
guess.
be an expert
Whatever.
pilot. I don't want him to be an amateur.
That's
But
fucking
I
terrible.
don't think that archaeologists and aircraft pilots can be compared in that sense. Archaeology is a much more interpretive discipline. An aircraft pilot is not really interpreting situations that much. He knows what to do in certain situations. Archaeologists are interpreting the past, and yet they seem to get very upset by other.
It's got to be 53.
That are offered that don't.
It's got to be.
Theirs. And this is the problem of expertise in our society. Yes, expertise is very important. It's incredibly useful, but we should not place all our faith and trust in experts.
Right.
We need to liberate our own consciousness and freely think about things and make our own decisions about things and resist absolutely being told what to think.
Well, the problem is these experts are human beings, and human beings have very distinct behavior traits that they exhibit, especially when they're in a position of power and prestige.
Yeah.
And they like to hold that, and it feels good for them to be the person that looks down upon the people that don't know better and tell them what to do and tell them what to think. And when you're doing that with something like art, look, if you're doing that with something like mathematics, and someone's a mathematical expert, math is a very specific and precise science.
Yeah.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
Archaeology is like, who fucking knows what's out there?
Exactly.
Because you haven't searched everything.
No.
It's not possible to. And as we develop more these fascinating technologies like LiDAR, where you have the ability, ground penetrating radar, all these different things where you can look into the soil itself and find things that aren't visible on the surface, see them through trees, see them through that, we're going to find more, and obviously in Brazil they have done, in the Amazon they have done.
Well, that was part of our adventure.
Right.
with
This is the
season
run.
two,
What the
which
fuck was that? Why did I get stuck on the door?
was
What the fuck
working
you game?
with a really professional team in Brazil, led by an archaeologist, Marty Parsiman from the University of Helsinki, and a geographer from Brazil.
Oh, come on, man. No boost.
Years ago, was the first person who noticed that
I think I need a
these
boost
huge
still.
geometrical structures emerging out of the Amazon jungle, and he noticed it on a flight on a commercial aircraft in an area that happened to have been cleared by local farmers for planting crops. That there was this massive geometrical earthwork there, and that he actually coined the term geoglyphs for these because he compared them in some ways with the Nazca lines, which again are really only visible from the air. You get suddenly this massive scope and extent of these things, and it's same with the geoglyphs in the Amazon. And here's the thing: the ones we know about up till now we largely know about them because of these tragic clearances of the Amazon rainforest, which is a maybe short-term economic gain, but is long-term really not a very good idea. But now with LiDAR, it's possible to find these things without damaging any rainforest at all. And we had a LiDAR expert with us. You can fly LiDAR off at
It's okay still. It's not ideal, but it's okay.
It's incredible. It's a pretty hefty drop, but they can fly anywhere. And we found...
Not a very good ending.
It was actually the LiDAR expert who found. He found you can see the edge of the rainforest where the clearances stop.
I think that was the gate, though. The gate was 54 gate.
And then he flies over there, and within a matter of hours, he's found multiple more of these structures. Several
that are deep in the rainforest.
That are deep in the rainforest, covered completely. And LiDAR allows him to see through the canopy and to see what's underneath it without damaging it. And there are these huge earthworks, and this raises the question: how much more is there in the Amazon to find? Especially which even the archaeologists who are most reluctant are now willing to accept that the Amazon had a huge population before the Spanish conquest.
Just so wild. That's such a shift.
Millions, cities.
Yeah.
A whole different way of life, a whole different kind of civilization from the one that we have today. One that lived in a man-made garden, which is what the Amazon really and truly is, and lived in harmony with them.
That's an interesting thing too. We've talked about that before, but for people who've never heard those other podcasts, they've determined that the Amazon rainforest is at least partially man-made.
Definitely. They've determined that because of the preponderance of trees that serve human needs. They call them hyperdominant, and things like Brazil nut trees, which are providing food for human beings, are in massive dominance in relation to trees that aren't useful to human beings. And it's clear that this is the result of a long-term human project to make this jungle serve human needs.
What was the other one? The ice cream bean? What was that?
Ice cream bean, I'm forgetting all of the details, but there's a bunch of
Food plants.
of
Right.
food plants which are hyperdominant in the Amazon rainforest, and these food plants.
Oh, let's go,
show
baby. Come on, this is it.
Nurturing, have been massaging this natural wonder
Fuck me.
and turning it into something that really serves.
Might have ruined it there.
And there's the other thing that you've discussed in depth, the terra preta. This
Yeah, I did.
man-made, incredibly rich, nutrient-dense soil that they can grow incredible agriculture off of, that we really to this day don't know how they created.
It's a mystery. Again, it was a great privilege to have the opportunity to stand in a pit of terra preta that is being excavated, to get down 15 feet into that.
Can they recreate it once they get it?
It appears that but indigenous communities in the Amazon are still doing this. They're still doing it, mixing all kind of refuse and waste together and enriching the soil with it. So it's not stopped. Terra preta is still being made, but most of it is very old. And the oldest that they found so far is about 8,000 years old.
So it's just large-scale regenerative agriculture using some old, lost method.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And making, see, a rainforest, even when you choose trees that are going to serve human needs, it's not enough. You do need to be able to plant in the rainforest. And that is what terra preta has allowed people to do. Rainforest soils are not particularly fertile by nature. So it's these spots of fertility all over the Amazon. We went into that mystery quite a bit in one of the episodes.
It's so interesting, especially when you consider the stories like the Lost City of Z, which they turned into an interesting film.
Yeah.
But the book details these records of these incredible cities that these people had visited a long time ago, and then when they tried to go back, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Because everybody had died off because of European diseases, probably.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. But those cities were just consumed by the jungle.
Yeah.
And much like Detroit, if you go to Detroit now, you can see there's a bunch of neighborhoods in Detroit that are essentially abandoned, and trees are growing right through the houses. And the houses are, that's just a few decades ago.
Yeah.
And the houses are almost gone in some ways. And if you went back 200 years ago, there'd probably be nothing left of them. And this is probably exactly what happened in the Amazon, except the trees just consume the landscape because it's such an incredible dense rainforest that things grow so quickly there.
That's what happened. I mean, before the Lost City of Z, we have this very interesting report. I have mentioned it to you before in previous episodes. The expedition of
I looked up later.
Gaspar de Carvajal and his chronicler Francisco de Orellana.
R.I.P. Detroit? Oh no, what happened? What does that even mean?
The Amazon took them.
Oh
and
no.
let them go back. And they traveled 4,000 miles across South America.
I'm sorry to laugh.
Started on the Pacific side and ended up in the Atlantic Ocean. Wow. And that's in the 1560s. And they report seeing enormous, thriving, prosperous cities, highly civilized with advanced arts and crafts. And they
got trees in their houses.
Later,
yeah, really.
Other Spaniards.
You're talking about comets? Were they talking about a comet hitting the Earth? What's up, Sailor Person? Where are you in?
Which is that the jungle had eaten those cities because the human population.
Trees in their house? What do you mean, like a tornado?
Brought by the Spaniards. The Spaniards didn't have to have direct contact with those indigenous peoples in the middle of the Amazon. The diseases just jumped from population to population and just killed everybody.
Yo, Sailor Curse, have you been following like what Elon Musk has been saying on Twitter?
Most people probably aren't even aware.
Elon's been a mad lad.
There was a genocide of Native Americans in this country, but most people don't know that 90% of them were wiped out by disease.
Absolutely.
Which is just
oh, were they?
Think about. Yeah. Millions.
Oh, I
of
didn't
people
hear
just
that.
wiped out
Thanks, bro.
Over the course of a few decades or 100 years by diseases.
Yeah, it's an early example of a biological weapon.
Yeah. Right.
And to some extent, it was used deliberately as a biological weapon, like those smallpox-infected blankets.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. If you go on Google Earth on Detroit, and you can find the neighborhoods too, because there's a lot of like empty lots.
From what I've looked at from the Spanish conquest,
you know what I mean?
There was a realization.
Like fields, because the houses were burned down or whatever. Really sad. You only need to shut the fuck up until the 20th. Yeah.
Right, because we had it forever in Europe. Yeah. It's just so terrible.
It's bad though. MPLS. What's MPLS?
And you realize like that was you guys fucking killed everybody.
Yeah. The diseases did. I mean, the
I always
battles
learned
did
so much
get
from chat.
fought, but
Oh,
not
Minneapolis.
on the order of the
Yeah.
distances. Mexico City fell to the Spaniards.
There's a lot of like bankers and stuff in
primarily
Minneapolis, St. Paul.
and secondarily because the Aztecs weren't popular with their neighbors. So it really wasn't just Cortez. And 400
Yeah, buddy.
Spaniards.
I endorse it.
Cortez and 400
I
Spaniards,
endorse it.
plus smallpox, plus
Please.
the Tlaxcalans, who the Aztecs had used as a sort of
No, but honestly, like,
sacrifices.
okay, if you really want to talk about
And the Tlaxcalans looked at
issues,
Cortez and they said,
so I had to buy health care
and so they
when I was in
tried.
Miami
Tens of
in
thousands of
2022. I got Cigna insurance, medical insurance,
So, would archaeology
and
be in control of expressing that narrative?
I learned about it. So I found like there was like a $2,000
Nobody can explain Olmecs.
a year. This is what I found.
It's a very
$2,000 a year
Again,
for really
start
basic
talking about
coverage. I think like
facial
$100,000
features,
limit
then
or
they jump
something.
in with you're being racist, you're
And then
being
there's like a
white supremacist or
$400,000 a
whatever.
year
Well,
for
all
like,
don't-
I don't know,
don't say white supremacist.
400, 500,000 limit.
How would that be racist?
Then there was a
Racist.
6,000 a
These
year
were the most
for
advanced seafaring
$1 million
people
coverage
6,000 years ago.
Again,
That would be kind of the opposite.
the
at any
racism
hospital, I
thing was
think.
just being used to shut it down.
Right.
This is something that we, particularly,
And it's pretty comparable to the taxes that we pay for healthcare. Like, I don't have a doctor in Canada. You know? Well, what do you guys pay for health insurance?
Brackets? Did you see that?
I did.
Right? What do you guys pay? It's probably about like 5,000, 6,000 a year, no? Well, bro, I've had like, when my head injury, if I had it in the United States, it probably would have costed over $1 million for sure.
Like, you ever see that people, they don't, like, if they want their post to be
I
more
pay
viral,
like
they don't
200 a
write
month
the
for
word
me and
shooter.
Jess.
They write SH and then they put like two
Wow, what's your limit? What's your...
I've noticed people doing that.
Yes. So what people are trying to do by blanking
Interesting.
out swear words,
Interesting. Thanks for
cutting out
sharing, bro.
different words, is
Get
that
government
you-
health?
you
Nice.
bypass
And it's shit?
algorithms
Oh, sorry,
that
dude. I didn't read the
selectively
rest.
remove or limit the distribution
Because I'm
of those
disabled,
kind of
yeah.
posts with those keywords in it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that apparently
For
was all I was
both.
trying to do, was adding brackets
What's
to
the
something
limit?
to-
Maybe I went
against
overkill.
the
Not, I
algorithm.
don't use that word.
But it's just
Maybe
like
maybe
accusing
1 million
someone of
was too
racism,
much
it should
coverage.
be like, it should be very clear what they're saying. There
But I
should be-
mean,
it
if I was,
shouldn't be
I think I
you
decided that because I'm
decide
like, if I'm gonna pay 4,000 a year,
to decide that this person's racist. Oh, this code means this. This is
and
commonly
like
used
I
code.
get the $500,000
From what I
plan,
understand, those
and I go to the
brackets
hospital and I end up
just to-
owing like
just to
hundreds of
help.
thousands of dollars to what, to
Just
save
like
$2,000.
asterisks
Like, I'll just fucking get the million.
I think it's very unfortunate.
Because
that
I think it
serious
also
and
covers like
interesting
car accidents and stuff too.
that this issue of race immediately gets dumped into it.
Yeah.
Because those who are dumping race
It's
into the
decent.
issue know that that's a way to shut down a conversation. Nobody wants to be accused of being
5 or
It's
6K
also
a year.
the dumbest
Mm.
suggestion
Yeah.
because the
So
most
it's very comparable to
sophisticated ancient
Canada. Say
civilization that's
say an
back
average
to this day is in Africa.
salary is like between
Shut the fuck
I don't know.
Shut the fuck up. It
It
doesn't make
varies.
sense.
Exactly.
Those were the
Say
most
$50,000.
advanced
I know that's not
And
everyone's
we-
making
we-
$50,000.
we're in disagreement.
That's a very good
There's a lot of
salary, but
confusion, debate as to how long ago they were
say
there.
the
According to their
median.
hieroglyphs, they were there 30,000 plus years
Absolutely.
ago. But at the very least, those were people in Africa. Okay, so all the races.
What percentage
should
is
be out
that?
the window because no
Canada,
one's
we
saying
pay
that
a
was
lot of
anybody else.
taxes, and I don't have a
That
doctor.
was an African civilization.
They literally have images of
I don't have a doctor
you
to
know,
my
they
name.
look, you know, these
Neither do
drawings,
my
what they look like,
78-year-old
statues, what they look
parents.
like. It was an African civilization. They were the most advanced people, perhaps ever. I'm leaning towards ever.
And they
I'm
don't
leaning
allow
towards
a
ever.
2-tier private system.
Because look, can we think of any other civilization
pretty insane.
that survived for 3,000
But everything is free
years?
here.
Right. They
Which
can
is
go
what-
visit right now.
Childbirth
They
is
go
free.
visit right now.
Tourist site.
But ancient
My head
Egypt
injury and
as a
survival
culture
was all
survived
completely
for
free. All the
3,000 years.
ambulances were
It-
free.
It survived the.
It was really
Roman occupation,
miraculous.
survived the previous Persian occupation.
I was in intensive
It was
care
only
for
the
like 2
Romans
weeks
that brought it rolling.
between 3 different
Roman
hospitals
occupation
and
of Egypt
all the different
began at the
ambulances.
end
To
of
put it into
Roman Egypt.
perspective, I always use this quote.
So-
I forget who came up with this, but it's a perfect analogy. Cleopatra.
But that was
lived
2016,
closer to the invention of
not
the
2024,
iPhone than
right?
she did to the construction of the pyramids.
Yeah.
Even if you use the
I had my
conventional
accident before
2005
Trudeau.
BC date of the construction of the pyramids, which is also under debate.
It's under debate.
Even if that's true, even if it is 2,500 years ago,
the most baffling thing is
Yeah,
how
if
did
I had
they
that
do it?
accent today.
There's no simple answers.
Canada.
I don't give a fuck what anybody says. There's no simple answers. How did they do
Be
it?
bad news.
How did they have such incredible sophistication
Come on,
in
this is the run.
construction methods? How did they get those massive 80-plus ton stones 500 miles down from the mountains with no equipment, no heavy machinery?
Fuck off.
Whatever they did,
It's okay
I
still.
think it's reasonable to say that in a different way.
I don't know what fuck
I don't think they
happened
had
there.
iPhones. I don't think they had email, but they
Focus.
were probably more sophisticated than us today in their ability to manipulate stone
fuck me.
and make
They certainly-
construction.
They certainly were. And I think they had mastery of techniques that we don't. That we
It
don't
wasn't
know.
peace.
And
Great.
perhaps
Good run though.
And perhaps equipment. The Great Pyramid remains
Damn
to
it.
me an abiding
Could have
mystery,
been peace.
which, despite probably 100 or more
Fuck me, man.
visits to the Great Pyramid and
It wasn't
being
perfect
inside
gate
it
though. It
and
was
spending
shit
the night
gate.
in it and exploring every passage and every chamber, including the
It's a pretty good gate, but it
so-called
wasn't
leading
perfect.
chambers above the King's Chamber. I still can't figure it out. I don't
Sucks.
understand how it was possible to
fine.
do this. And then the time span which Egyptology gives us, because Egyptology is fixed on the idea that the Great Pyramid is a tomb, and
So
And then it was built in about 20 years.
and 23.
that's really the only main
Because if
difference.
it's the tomb of Khufu,
In
then it had
car
to be
insurance
built
too,
in
but our
23 because that was
insurance
his
is pretty
reign.
shit too.
He would start, in theory, building it at the beginning of his reign, and it's finished by the end of his reign. That's 23 years.
We would
And
benefit
in
so
the
much.
broader span, if you look at the fourth dynasty,
The value of our
and even go
dollar,
back to the
like
end of the
we
third
would be using
dynasty,
American
where
dollars,
Xerxes and
life would
the
improve
Step Pyramid, you find that this is a sudden
significantly.
emergence of incredible skills, which lasts for about 100 years, and then it goes away. It stops. The pyramids that follow the Great Pyramid of Giza, the three pyramids on the Giza Plateau, the pyramids that follow them, the fifth dynasty
Look at these
pyramids,
micro stocks,
are
like
really
fuck
poor.
off.
They're very, very poor quality workmanship. They're falling to pieces. You can hardly recognize from the outside that they're a pyramid at all. When you get inside, you do find wonderful chambers, and you do find what you don't find in any of the great pyramids, which is huge numbers of hieroglyphs and accounts of the person who was supposedly buried in that pyramid.
What do you think of Christopher Dunn's work? Christopher Dunn came on the podcast and he
What
explained
the
his
fuck?
theory that he thinks the Great Pyramid of Giza was some sort of a power plant.
I think it's a theory which deserves to be taken seriously, along with other theories as to what it is. But one thing I know for sure is that the theory that it was just a tomb and nothing else is bust. That is not a satisfactory theory anymore. So we should be open to a number of possibilities. And
I don't think
Chris
they were
comes to
peace.
this from a background of machine tool making. He's a very precise guy. He's an engineer. He understands this kind of thing. And when he looks at particularly at Saqqara, you have this thing called the
So yeah, I support it.
which is an underground labyrinth, and it's got wide corridors through it, and then off each side are rooms. And in each
I gotta
room
get on this like
are
H1B visa to the US, honestly.
boxes, which
Gotta get in
appear
on
to
that.
held the corpses of bulls. They're like sarcophagi for human beings, but they're on an enormous.
As I just
gigantic
criticized it.
weighing hundreds of tons and cut out of the hardest possible rock, precisely engineered. Everything is.
But like
exact.
Elon's not even
Is that
American. Like
among
what's he even
other things
doing?
That is attracting Chris's attention to the possibility.
What is this guy even doing in
A
America?
lost technology in ancient Egypt, and then he asked himself the question: well, what was the Great Pyramid if it wasn't a tomb?
Doing what he's doing.
What might it have been? And he's come.
Is that
he's
not
come
just
to the solution that it was some kind of energy generator,
Like an
some
invader?
some kind of power plant. And
Yeah, using
Elon is definitely
hydrogen.
an invader of the United
Oddly enough,
States.
there's just a recently published archaeological paper concerning the step pyramid at Saqqara, which is suggesting that they used hydraulics to
I
lift
can't think of
the
an
stones
even
up inside.
greater.
And that begins to come
Invader
close to the kind
than
of
him.
the kind of technology in some ways that Chris is talking about. I think it's worth taking very seriously. I've always had great respect for Chris. I've travelled to Egypt with him, and I think he's done very important work contributing to this, and also looking at the stone vases from ancient Egypt. I remember the first time I was drawn to this mystery, which was
He gave us one of them. This is a 3D print of
that's a 3D print of one
yeah,
of
this
those.
is a
One of
3D
those
print
vases.
of an actual stone vase.
Yeah.
And
Fuck me, I threw way
it
two
might
good runs,
be,
but I don't think
like,
they were
not
pace.
that exciting to people. Like, oh,
I mean, you know, it's a weird
the
level,
big
but
deal is
I don't
the
think they were
precision in
pace.
which this
That's
was
right.
constructed with handles on it, so it couldn't have been spun on a lathe.
No.
They weren't
Because it has these two handles that are also
spectacularly
cut out of
fast.
stone,
Yeah.
and everything is precise to within thousands of a human hair,
Yeah.
which is bananas.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense given what we are taught was the level of technology of Egypt at that time.
Now there is some dispute of where these came from. There is some dispute about what is, have these been made in a modern way, and has someone tried to replace, you know?
Are we looking at fakes or hoaxes?
So we're looking at hoaxes.
Well, perhaps in some cases we are, but certainly in others, including those in the great museums in Cairo, they've now moved a lot of the content of the Cairo Museum out to a big museum at Giza, and some of it's in transition. But they have thousands of these things.
The thing is, like, even if this was modern technology, we don't know what they did.
No.
We don't know what modern technology exists that you could take an incredibly hard piece of stone and cut it into this unbelievably precise little vase with handles on it, and some bizarre method that we don't know, and hollowed out the inside of it, and some of them with very thin necks, and then a hollowed out inside. Like, how?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Very thin necks, and then this bulbous base to it.
And it's all perfect.
There's another piece which it's hard to describe, but it's got a series of 3 flanges that come across. It's like a wheel, but nobody knows what it is, and it's cut out of incredibly hard rock, or cut or shaped in some way. I've never seen a satisfactory explanation for this thing. I wish I could call up a picture, but I don't know.
Do you know what it's called?
I can't remember.
Jamie's a wizard at finding things.
I've written about it in Fingerprints of the Gods.
I bet Jamie's already found it.
Let's see.
Is that it?
No. Yes, top left. That's the one.
That?
When I first saw that in the Cairo Museum, it's carved from schist. You know, this thing is hard. And when I first saw that in the Cairo Museum, I thought, how on earth did they do this? Why isn't this a big mystery? Why isn't this being seen as a mystery? Because
that looks like a piece of an engine.
It does, doesn't it? It looks
that looks like something I found on my Land Cruiser.
Yeah. It looks like part of something else. We're finding a bit of something larger.
Wow, that looks like, to me, like some part of some kind of machine.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that it looks like.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks
If you know, like, automobiles and parts, and you look at something like that, like, oh yeah, that goes probably in there somewhere.
Exactly. And what is its function if it isn't something else? It's difficult to see what function it could have.
What is the conventional explanation of what this thing is?
Some kind of offering bowl?
Click on that, that article. Oh, okay. The Sabu disc, an ancient Egyptian artifact from the First Dynasty, 3000 to 2800 BC. Found in 1936 in how do you say that? Saqqara necropolis in Mastaba.
Mastaba S311. Those are sort of tombs which have got 2 levels.
What an incredible piece.
It is an incredible piece.
I had never seen that before.
And there it is, First Dynasty. And of course, you can't actually date the object itself, so they're dating it from context. What they're saying is that it was found in a First Dynasty context. But it may have been a legacy even then. It may have been an old object even then. We just don't know that. But it's at least But it's at least that old from the context.
So it's at least 3,000 years old. They think it was used in
5,000 years old.
3,000 BC. They think it was used in brewing beer as a mash rake to mix and even out the mixture of grains.
Sorry, I'll be happier. I'll be less profane.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know either, but I would have thought that if that was your project, you could do it without carving schist into that.
Click on that thing. What is the mysterious Egyptian disc? It says it right there. That's it. Can we click on that? Can we go full scale on that so I can see what that looks like? Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, it really is.
That is such a specific shape. Like, if you're going to just use that to make beer, it seems weird.
And it's a lot of work to make beer. Yeah. You could do it another way.
That looks like some kind of a fan to me. It looks like something that would be on a belt.
Yeah.
You know, like on some sort of a.
Something's driving it. Yeah.
It looks like a fan.
Yeah. It could be.
It looks like those things underneath it. It looks like that's how you would funnel water or air.
Yeah. It clearly had a function. Nobody would go to the trouble of creating something as complex and difficult to make as this unless there was a useful function.
What is it made out of?
Schist, which is a hard stone.
That's crazy that's made out of stone.
Yeah.
Like, how did you...
Cut out of one piece of stone.
How did you do that? And how are the measurements of that? Oh, look, it's Giorgio. He says it's aliens. I'm just gonna guess. Is this thing that's cut out of this? Oops, I lost it there for a second. This thing that's cut out of this incredibly hard stone, like, do they have any sort of an or a guess of how someone would cut something like that?
I've never seen a satisfactory guess. But those like Chris Dunn, who are studying the technology of ancient Egypt, are confident that we're looking at the traces of a lost technology. We don't know how this was done. Like so much else in ancient Egypt, like we don't know how the 70-ton blocks were raised to become the roof of the king's chamber either in the Great Pyramid. There's so much that we don't know and that's not explained and that is easily written off by abusively arrogant experts who say there's no mystery here.
That doesn't look super precise in terms of the radius of it. When you're looking at it, it looks like it looks handmade, doesn't it?
I'm sure it is handmade. The question is how.
Right, but you know what I'm saying? So are these vases, right?
Yeah.
But there's something about it that's like a little more crude.
Yeah.
But it probably didn't have to be precise because whatever it did, probably just had a spin.
And it survived through at least 5,000 years.
It definitely looks like it was something that spun, right? Because you have that hollowed out piece in the center that you would have an axle.
I'm gonna load the vape again.
Yeah.
It's welded in certain
Probably gonna do a weightlifting stream later this evening.
Well, how do they weld
Tonight.
stone?
Maybe this evening.
Apparently they carved that shape out of just one bolt. That's crazy. Now that one looks ultra precise.
remade off of the original, maybe.
Click on that.
I would say that's a remake.
Is it? It's not. It's insane. That's even more insane. Because that looks so perfect. Why does that look different than the other images? Well, go back to that one where it's spinning around. Yeah, look at it when it spins around. That looks pretty precise.
They do look like they've recreated. Did they only find one and they've recreated it from
I think the $6,000 plan
There's
had
one
dental
original.
too,
No doubt people
and the
have tried to make
4,000
copies
didn't,
with modern
or
materials,
it didn't.
but
4,000 like really basic dental.
Yeah.
Well, also you got to think, if it is made out of stone, some of the edges have to be beat up just from being in the ground for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's not the same? You sure it's not just a different
looks all
lighting?
beat up like the
Right. It does.
Smooth.
Right, right. That does look like a recreation, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. I think that's a recreation.
Okay. Well, whatever it
The
is.
thing is, where you come to
Fucking
this, there's thousands of objects that defy explanation.
What are those, Jimmy? Put that back up. What are those things? Do you know what those are?
The first wheels.
Oh. 4,000.
It's wheels, 1500 BC, basically.
And that's one of the weirder things about Egypt, right? We don't think they had the wheel.
No, they definitely had the wheel.
They
Whether
definitely
whether they had the wheel in the Old Kingdom
Right. But
is
that's-
another question. But certainly by the New Kingdom, by the time of Ramesses, they had wheels, they had chariots.
Yeah. But I mean, the people that built the pyramids. That 2,500 BC is not, like, when do they think the wheel was invented?
Well, it's actually not clear to me when the wheel was invented.
Let's see what I thought the conventional guess of when the invention of the wheel was post the construction of the pyramids.
I believe that's the case.
Yeah.
But one of the things about wheel is you have to ask yourself, in what circumstances, in what places, in what conditions are wheels useful? There are some conditions in which a wheel is not a useful thing. Which
Oh,
is
that
gonna
was
be bogged
nice.
down in the sand, which is not going to be helpful. The use of sleds was certainly part of how ancient Egyptians
It's fucking
moved
terrible.
huge stones, and I don't dispute
I
that.
don't know what's going on with my
The problem
ending
is
there.
how they then get those stones 300 feet in the air.
Too wide.
Right.
You can slide anything on wet sand.
Oh man, that was the worst landing ever.
How do you
After a
get
good
the
lock
top
shot.
of the
It's
How'd
too
you get
bad.
to the top of the King's Chamber? That's the
How did
problem.
you fit it perfectly?
Perfectly. And you know, I've been up there and I've been in every one of the chambers above it, and each one of them is floored with these 70-ton
think I need a
blocks
vape.
and is roofed with it.
It's so nuts. It doesn't even seem like 1,000 years more advanced than us. It seems like thousands of years more advanced.
More advanced in a different way. I think this is part of the problem where I've been perhaps misunderstood by Egyptologists when I talk about an advanced civilization. I keep trying to emphasize we shouldn't look for ourselves in the past, that if we're going to go back 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 years into the past and talk about a civilization, it's not going to be like us. It's going to be very different. It's going to have different priorities, different ways of looking at things. But one of the things that the ancient Egyptians had, which I'm not aware that any other civilization has had, is the ability to sustain essentially a single culture with a single set of spiritual ideas, and to sustain that for 3,000 years, and to keep people happy and fed and well looked after. This is an amazing achievement, amazing stability. When you look at it, what our civilization, how old is it really? Can we trace it back to the Romans? Probably not. Maybe 500 years, the beginning of mechanization and so on and so forth in our civilization.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
If you think, there's so many mysteries to it. For anybody to pretend that they have all the answers to something as perplexing as Egypt.
I think this is an area where I often get criticised, but I think when we look at a civilization and what it is and what it's achieving and why it's so special, when we look at our civilization today, we are fantastic at technology. We are brilliant at science.
Oh, I gotta come later.
Best possible machines.
I know now.
And
Later.
we're a society that is built
I don't know why I'm
around
freaking out so early.
a society in which people
I
define
go all the way to the floor.
in terms of what they own, what they possess, what they produce. And it becomes a very materialistic society, a society that's focused on material things, where we define ourselves by our material possessions. Ancient Egypt had a totally different focus. Yeah, they were great at making material things, but that was secondary.
Alright, I'm gonna go debate. I might try another like half hour more.
Why are we living this life? What
And I might
happens
do
to us when
weightlifting
we die?
stream.
They investigated that mystery more deeply than
Thanks for being here.
that I know of, and they were doing so right from the beginning of records.
And they were documenting this journey to the afterlife.
Absolutely.
In hieroglyphs, and it's like, what were you documenting? Like, how do you know? Like, what were you trying? How did everyone agree on this particular myth or this story?
Unless there was some experience being brought to bear in it. It's one of the things that we point out in season 2 is that the ancient Egyptian notion of a leap to the sky after death, to the Milky Way, of a journey along the Milky Way, of encountering challenges and dangers and risks there, monsters that would block your path, gates that you had to know the password to get through. That idea is found all over the world. The path of souls. It's found all over the Americas. That
What do you think that they're trying to say?
Well, I think first of all it's evidence of a remote common origin of this idea. When it's found amongst cultures all around the world that apparently had no contact with one another and are often separated by hundreds or thousands of years. The same idea is found about what happens to us after death. The only reasonable explanation I can come up with is that they've all inherited this idea and then developed it in their own ways from a remote common source. And that's one of the main reasons that I'm curious about the possibility of a lost civilization. That these spiritual ideas are found all around the world. And they involve the journey of the soul after death and a leap to the heavens. And sometimes it's called an underworld, but really it's set in the sky. And this journey that takes place, where you are judged on what you've done with your life. This is something else that we avoid in the world today, is taking responsibility for our own lives. The ancient Egyptians required you to take responsibility for your life. And if you did not do so, the outcome after death would not be good. You had to you had to realize the incredible gift that you had been given. And one of the opportunities of that gift is the opportunity to accumulate wisdom. And that's one of the things
Come on,
we
man.
all do as we get older, is get a bit more wisdom and a bit more understanding. That in the
A
case
love
of ancient
fest of epic
that
proportions?
idea
Come on,
was
man.
developed over 3,000 years, and it's essentially the same at the beginning as it is.
It's insane, it just stops.
That the soul, that death is not. This is the conclusion of a society that put its best minds at work for 3,000 years on this problem. The death is not the end. We may think it is. Scientists may tell us it is. But when a scientist says death is the end, there's nothing more, we're just physical bodies, and when the light goes out, it goes out forever, that's actually not a scientific fact. That's not something that's being investigated or can be investigated.
Consciousness itself is so confusing. Just consciousness. Just like, what is it? Why are we conscious? What is it local, or are we tuning into consciousness? And when you die, where's that go? Where's that energy go? Is the soul a real thing? Like, what is the essence of life? What is the essence of human life and human consciousness? Those are perplexing questions.
They're very perplexing questions, which actually are of great significance to every one of us. Yeah, I mean, suppose death just is the end, then that's a way not to have to take too much responsibility for our lives, for the impact that we've had on others, for the pain that we may have caused, or for the joy that we may have caused. If death's the end, there's no up or downside to that, whatever we do. But from the ancient Egyptian point of view, death's not the end, and you have been given the precious gift of life. What did you do with it? And there are moral aspects to that question. There's these 42 assessors, they're called the negative assessors, who ask the soul of the deceased questions about what they did in life. And those are all moral questions. They bear some relationship actually to the Ten Commandments. But there's another question, which is called the weighing of words. And that question is, what did you do with the gift we gave you? We gave you the gift of a human life. We gave you the gift of the opportunity to love or to hate, at your choice. We gave you the gift to live in a human body, to have this incredible consciousness, to be able to integrate all kinds of information from all kinds of spheres. What did you do with it? Did you leave the world a better place or a worse place than when you came into it? Did you hurt and damage and cause pain to others consistently out of wicked intent, not accidentally but deliberately causing pain? And there are human beings who do that. For the ancient Egyptians, that kind of behavior meant an introduction to Amit, the eater of the dead. And Amit is displayed in the judgment scene. He's a creature, part hyena, part lion, and he sits there, and certain souls do not go on. Their journey ends, and it ends because of the choices they made during life, and because they never took responsibility for what they did.
Well, it kind of makes sense. A natural selection of the souls.
In a way.
That if there's natural selection of humans and natural selection of animals that allows them to prosper, and to get better and to evolve, it makes sense that would happen with the soul as well. I'm just so confused as to what the environment was like that allowed these people to keep this insane civilization developing and innovating for so long, that they were so more advanced than anyone else that was alive back then that we're aware of, at least as far as like what we've uncovered, what they left behind.
The beautiful art that they made.
Yeah.
The perfection of their geometry, their incredibly advanced astronomy. All of these things are hallmarks of a very sophisticated, very advanced civilization. Sure, they didn't have iPhones,
but just the sophistication of the symmetry of the facial structure of the statues. Yeah. Incredible.
Beautiful things.
Just bizarrely technologically advanced. Yeah. Bizarrely. Because to perform something like that, you need incredible tools of measurement. Enormous statues that have faces that are absolutely perfectly symmetrical. Yeah. How did you do that? How'd you stand that up?
Well, the answer is we
don't know.
We don't know. There's so much that we don't know, and it's that attitude towards the past which I think would be more helpful. Is that we have this mysterious background to we human beings. As you said earlier, anatomically modern humans, we think that they first appeared about 300,000 years ago. Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, 310,000 years ago. Now, I can remember a time not so long ago, back in the 1990s, when it was thought that the first anatomically modern humans were as recent as 50,000 years ago. And then they shifted it, new finds were made to 110,000 years ago, now 310,000 years ago. We don't really know how far into the past that goes. And we don't know about the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, who were also human beings. Certainly they were human, the same species as us, because they could interbreed with us. You can't breed with another species. And that takes the journey back even further. And that's one of the reasons why I have a problem with the notion that civilization just emerges 6,000 years ago. Because we had the same kit, the same wiring, the same brains for at least 300,000 years, and we weren't doing any of this stuff, apparently. I suspect we were, but it's not made the record.
Well, it seems that what they were dealing with in terms of the resources in the Nile Valley was unbelievably bountiful.
It was bountiful.
And that's probably one of the reasons, before the climate shifted and changed and it became a lot of desert. Before that, it was probably incredibly bountiful, and that allowed them to stay there for a long period of time and not have to worry about food.
It certainly did. The bounty, however, goes back much further. This is one of the reasons why I kept on trying to talk about the Sahara during the debate. This vast area, which frankly has not been studied properly by archaeology at all. Hardly a fraction of it has been studied. This vast area, I'm often accused of creating what they call a God of the gaps argument. I'm saying you haven't looked enough in the Sahara. You haven't looked enough in the submerged continental shelves. You haven't looked enough in the Amazon rainforest. And the argument is that I'm trying to put my lost civilization into these gaps. But these are very special gaps. The submerged continental shelves were prime real estate during the Ice Age. That was the place to be, just as it is today, to be near coastlines. The Amazon rainforest was a bountiful place, and the Sahara Desert was green and rich for thousands of years during the Ice Age, with lakes, with rivers. It was the kind of place where a civilization might well have emerged.
They find whale bones.
Whale bones, yeah.
Whales.
Yeah.
So anybody who doesn't think there's a mystery in the Sahara Desert,
Yeah.
and anybody who really tries to dismiss the notion that most of it hasn't been really excavated, but it really hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
It's too vast.
It's too vast, and it's too expensive to
And the
excavate.
excavation, like, you would have to. You're dealing with a place where how many people even live there?
Nobody knows, because it's not been investigated properly. It's a desert, and it's had relatively little attention. We do know there's some amazing rock art from the Upper Paleolithic in Tassili in Algeria, in the Sahara, but not enough has been done. This is the problem for me with saying archaeology's basically got the story of the human past nailed down, is that there's huge areas which have not been investigated. And I reject the idea that that is a God of the gaps argument, because that's not why I'm proposing there was a lost civilization. And that's all I'm doing. I'm not insisting, I'm not demanding that people believe me. I just want to inject this idea into the discussion so that it can be considered. When taken out of context was a little clip where you asked me during the debate, is there any evidence for your lost civilization in what they've found? And I said, in what they've found, no. And then I went on to say, but that brings us to the point of what they've looked for and what they've not looked for, what they've found and what they've not found. That has been taken again and again as me saying that there's no evidence for my lost civilization, whereas what I'm actually saying is there's no evidence in what archaeologists have studied for a lost civilization, because I'm not studying what archaeologists study. I am very happy to use material from archaeologists, and I could not do what I do if I didn't use material from archaeologists. It's a very important basis to my work. However, it's the astronomy, it's the astronomical alignments, it's the precision of the Great Pyramid, it's the myths of a global flood all around the world. It's a universal story of a massive cataclysm with a few survivors who bring their knowledge to others. This is one of the reasons why I think the Atlantis story, which Flint Dibble is so opposed to, deserves to be taken seriously, because it's part of a global tradition. It's yet another flood myth, in fact. It's the story, it's just like those 150 or 200 other flood traditions that come from around the world. And it's not enough for archaeologists to say, oh, people experienced a little local river flood, or there was a tidal wave that day, and so they decided that the whole world was submerged with water. That doesn't satisfy me at all. The fact that this is found all around the world, to me, is a memory of something that happened to our ancestors, something so traumatic, something so huge, that it's been preserved better than almost anything else from our past.
What is your take on the Reichart structure? Am I saying it right?
Reichart structure, Mauritania. I would not like to say one way or the other because I've not been there. I've not had boots on the ground there. I've not been able to look at it. Yes, it's very intriguing.
Very. Also the salt all around it.
Yeah.
It shows that at one point in time it was probably submerged. Like something happened.
Probably was, but you might have to go back many millions of years to get to that point. The honest answer to that question is I don't know. I'm open-minded on the Reichart structure. It's something that I would like to study. but I have not had time to. In future work, it's something that I may study, and after studying it, I may come to the conclusion that it's just a remarkable natural phenomenon, of which there are many, or I may come to a different conclusion. It depends what the evidence shows me, but I try not to spout off on things that I'm not personally acquainted with and don't really know.
Well, good for you. I like spout off. It's also like there's so many of those things that people thought were myth, like Troy. And they find
No.
Find
Come on.
It turns out to be
So
a real
laggy.
I think
So I
the
looked
myths
up
are the
early.
banks of our species,
Only 37
and
still.
I don't think archaeology takes them
God
seriously.
damn it.
There's a tendency to just dismiss them as fantasies, as things that were made up by the ancients for some bizarre reason of their own. But they're the memories we have from the time before writing, from the time before documents were kept. And they're a precious resource in understanding our past. So it's things like that. And then at the end of the day, to twist what I said, that in what archaeologists have studied, there's no
Can't
evidence
believe I
for
missed that.
civilization, is completely wrong, because I've written thousands of pages of books. This is one of the issues. Like in that debate, I was supposed to prove everything about a lost civilization. I didn't even come here to prove it. I came here to explain why I'm interested in it and why I want to share my interest and my curiosity about the past with others. But if I'm asked to prove it, I would say don't refer to what I managed to say during a 3-hour debate. I'd say refer to the 8 or so major books that I've written with thousands of pages and thousands of documented footnotes. That's where my argument is in place. And you'll find that argument is not based on what archaeologists have studied. It's based precisely on what they've not studied about the past.
Well, regardless of the argument that Flint tried to put forth, that there's no evidence of what you're saying, the exaggeration of the shipwrecks, the stuff about seeds. The fact is, this resonates with a lot of people. This mystery is perplexing, it's confusing, and there's a lot of it out there. It's not like one site like Egypt. There's a ton of sites.
Yeah.
The Sage Wall in Montana. What do you think of that thing?
Again, I will withhold judgment until I have my boots
Why?
on the ground
Like how?
and have a look at it. And even then, that might not be enough. I do know that the property owners there are doing a lot of ground-penetrating radar, and there may be results from that. But at the moment, I would not.
I tried to look up the last
say
minute.
That's definitely a man-made structure. Nor would I say that's definitely a natural structure. I would say that's an intriguing structure. But it is in a geological context where other things like that are found. If I were asked to put money on it,
There it is.
yeah.
Boy, that looks.
I mean, it really is hard. It is hard to resist the conclusion.
I mean, it's super hard to resist the idea that that's man-made, and especially if it goes deeper into the ground. And they think it does. They think it goes.
Oh, it
deep.
does. It goes deeper. That's what the ground penetrating radar
How far?
is about. 30 feet.
30 feet.
In fact, I was
That
yesterday.
looks so man-made.
Yeah, it really does. When I look at that photograph, to me, that is a man-made structure. But I realize now, in the environment in which I live, surrounded by archaeologists extremely hostile to my work, that I better. It's not in my interests to leap to a conclusion about anything.
Of course.
Before I've studied it, and I do intend to go to Sage Wall. I was yesterday with Michael Collins, who's the guy who's done a lot of the videography on Sage Wall. He doesn't know whether it's natural or man-made either. More work needs to be done, but it's an intriguing issue, and it may be part of the lost history of the Americas. We just don't know.
What's crazy is if that is, how old is it?
How old is it? Who knows?
Who knows? And if you're talking about footprints of people that lived 22,000 years ago,
Yeah.
like what were they making things? Like what?
Yeah.
What was going on? Did they build something like that?
Yeah. Or even earlier.
Right.
Or
even earlier.
Is it
which
part of
crazy.
the lost story of the Americas? There's so much that's been lost, particularly in North America, with the massive destruction that took place during the 19th and 18th and early 20th century. It's reckoned that there were 1 million mound sites in North America. If you go back to 1500, there's about 100,000 left, which is a lot actually. But most of them are massively destroyed, and the other 900,000 have gone, just ploughed under, turned into farmland. And how much else of the prehistory of North America has been lost as a result of a process where first of all there was a conviction that the indigenous inhabitants had only been here for a very short time, whereas we now know they've been here for a very long time. And secondly, there was a propagandistic desire not to give too much credit to them. So let's get rid of some of this stuff.
Wow.
I was very disappointed when we were shooting season 2 of Ancient Apocalypse that we were not allowed by the authorities to film in Cahokia, which is one of the great mounds that still survive, because they've been told that I'm a pseudo-archaeologist and I'm going to mislead the public if I go there. So the best way is just to stop me going there. We tried to film in Moundville in Alabama as well, and again we were denied permission to film there. There's no doubt that archaeology has joined ranks to do their best to prevent me doing what I do.
That's so awful. To deny anyone the ability to, especially when you're going to put something like this on Netflix where millions of people are going to see it. Deny people just the access through video of experiencing this site and the mystery that's attached to it. Like, who are these people? Why did they build this? What artifacts haven't been discovered that are inside of this thing?
And here's what archaeologists say. Here's an alternative point of view. You're an intelligent man. Make up your own mind.
You're being reasonable. That's outrageous.
It's a most unfortunate thing.
Well, it's not unfortunate that there's a lot of people that are interested in it, though.
More and more. It's a fascinating phenomenon. I do see it as an extension of our interest in our own genetic origins, for example. A lot of people, I haven't done it yet, but I'm kind of keen to do 23andMe or whatever it's called.
I wouldn't do it.
Nope.
Not now. No, they sell your data away.
They'll sell your data.
And now someone's going to know your exact DNA.
Yeah.
The whole thing's nuts. Like, I didn't know that they could do that, but apparently they have. Not only that, databases get breached. And they find your information.
My eldest son, who is half Somali and half English, had his DNA done with 23andMe. And he found, what it showed was that he's 50% African and 49% British and 1% Spanish. And we tried to figure that out, and the answer is that my ancestors came from Cornwall in the southwest of England. And that's where the Spanish Armada washed up. And the survivors of the Spanish Armada washed up and then integrated with the local community and contributed their genes. So, there is an interest in the past. There is interest in our personal past, our personal origins, our ancestors, who we are, and there's a much broader interest in the story of humanity that has brought us to where we are today. And this haunting feeling that something's missing, and that we have a civilization today. I often would like to compare it to a sort of furious, in terms of the level of consciousness, our civilization today is like a furious, petulant teenager. But in terms of what it can do, in terms of the destructive power of nuclear weapons, it's a god. So we have godlike powers with the consciousness of an immature teenager. That's what we're looking at in the world today. And maybe by understanding our past better, by understanding our unity from the past, maybe we can learn something that would be helpful to us in not carrying on in this way, because we do live at an inflection point just now. This is one thing I'm pretty sure that quote-unquote my lost civilization didn't have, and that was nuclear weapons. But we have nukes today, and we have them in an enormous scale. And behind each of those nukes is a fragile human being with his own or her own ego and complexes and fears and paranoia. And we're reaching a point where those buttons are going to be pressed. We are, as far as I know, the first human civilization that has the capacity to actually wipe itself out completely. We don't need a comet impact. We don't need a solar outburst. We can do it to ourselves. And that requires humanity to make a major step forward in consciousness. And I think making that major step forward in consciousness will be helped by better understanding our own past.
I agree. I mean, it's just disturbing how many times we can travel to ancient places like Greece or any place where you go to Rome and realize, oh, there's a thriving civilization here at one point. And
you were in Greece recently.
Yeah, with Brian.
You went with Brian Morareski.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy.
brilliant guy. But what a treat it is to have a tour of the Parthenon, the Acropolis, with him.
Yeah.
And we went to see the site of the Eleusinian Mysteries and all that. It was very, very, very interesting, but just also sobering, because you realize, like, this civilization did not make it. This insane, fascinating, complex civilization crumbled.
Yeah.
And the idea that ours can't is one that we kind of hold dear. Like, we're different. We got to figure it out. We're better. But there's so much evidence that that's just a normal pattern of human history.
Civilizations come and go.
Yeah.
We could be gone in 20 years.
Yeah.
I'd love to take you on a trip to Egypt.
I want to go. I'll tell you about an idea that was brought to me after the show. I can't talk about it now.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you.
I've made friends with Zahi Hawass.
I heard.
He's a very
You guys
interesting
are homies now.
Yeah, we're homies. we had a nice dinner together, and it's partly because who needs more enemies and hatred in this world?
Exactly.
And I said some very cruel and harsh things to Zahi in the past, and I felt the time had come to apologize for those. So I went to Egypt to apologize to him.
Really?
And we had a fantastic dinner together. His son joined us. Santa was there. It was very friendly and very positive.
I love stories like that.
And we've agreed that we will, if by chance we get a season 3 of Ancient Apocalypse, which we may or may not get. I'm not in control of commissioning decisions at Netflix, but if we get a season 3 of Ancient Apocalypse, I would like it to be entirely on Egypt. And what I would like is for Zahi to confront me on every point as we go through Egypt. Whatever one says about Zahi's explosive personality, he's been immersed in ancient Egyptian Egyptology for his whole life. And he has very strong points of view on it. And he's a fun guy.
I'd imagine that as people get older and wiser and realize the folly of their ways, particularly in their youth, maybe he would be more open to the idea that the civilization is just this civilization, same civilization, but older than you think it is.
Yeah, I'm hoping to persuade him of that. I think it'll be an interesting dialogue if we get to have it.
I think people for a long time had this concept in their mind that changing the dates somehow negates the accomplishment of the people that lived in the prescribed date.
Yeah.
That somehow or another...
they're pushing it back.
Yeah, they're pushing it back somehow or another. And they'll even say it's racist.
This is propaganda. This is archaeological propaganda. That's been said to me repeatedly, that I'm suggesting that all the achievements of certain indigenous cultures around the world should actually be handed to a lost civilization, that ideas were brought to them. Yet weirdly, those same archaeologists recognize that agriculture was introduced to Europe by immigrants from precisely the Göbekli Tepe area. That's where agriculture wasn't present in Europe until 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. It was brought in by other people. This is part of the human nature, that we share ideas. Somebody has a great idea, we look at that, we think, we'd like a bit of that too. Teach me how to do it. And this happens all the time, and it doesn't mean that the person who's being taught is any less than the person who's doing the teaching. The person who's being taught may have things to teach themselves. I've always felt that if there was a lost civilization at all, and I believe there was, but I can't absolutely prove it, I think we're looking at a terrible cataclysm. Part of it happened near Göbekli Tepe. Abu Huraira in Syria was hit by one of those airbursts, absolutely incinerated at that time. Terrible cataclysm with relatively few survivors, and that those survivors, just as we would do today, took refuge amongst people who'd made it through the disaster better. And those people who'd made it through would most likely have been hunter-gatherers, because hunter-gatherers are so resilient and so able to survive disasters, whereas people in a quote-unquote civilized condition are often not. I mean, we can see I understand that the hurricanes that are happening in the US at the moment are horrific natural events which are killing people. But we're talking about something on a scale vastly larger than that. And it's difficult for me to see. We find it hard enough to make it through a hurricane. I find it difficult to see how we could make it through another Younger Dryas impact event, or how we could make it through a man-made cataclysm as a result of nuclear war, which is, I suspect and I fear, is much closer than we think. I hate the idea that nuclear missiles may be flying in my lifetime or the lifetime of my children. But I have to say, honestly, it's a possibility with the state of the world at the moment and the low state of consciousness of the people who lead us. The leaders and governments are behind this. It's not human beings, individual people who are behind this hatred in the world today. It's leaders and governments who are mobilizing that hatred to serve their own interests. And it's very dangerous. If we didn't have nukes, it would be less dangerous.
Yeah, I agree with you. When you're talking about Göbekli Tepe, one of the things that Jimmy Corsetti has talked about recently in his YouTube show is that they have stopped excavation and they've planted trees above some
Yo,
of the
Toad,
areas,
brother, what's up,
which is
brother? How
very
are you, man?
strange.
It is. Yeah.
And
What's up, dude?
they want the excavation to resume in 150 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what would be a logical reason to not excavate these
Interesting.
fascinating ancient sites that are at least 11,000 years old?
Generally,
I drink a lot of water.
site, they don't excavate more than 5%.
My body is definitely
Often less than
water bloat
2%.
too.
Is that because of funds?
It's often because of funds, but it's also because of the feeling that as technology improves, more
I guess I eat a lot of
future. And that's a reasonable
processed
argument. Because
salt,
excavation
processed
is
foods.
destruction. To a certain extent, excavation destroys what's being excavated.
It's winter
and
too. Winter
therefore,
sucks.
When you interfere with a site and start excavating it, you may
I
be
like never go outside.
destroying materials that in 100 years technology would be able to interpret in a completely different way.
The only
In 100
physical
years-
exercise I
100
do
years
is the
from
weightlifting.
where we are at present, and you didn't have carbon dating, you didn't have LiDAR, you didn't have all kinds of methods of dating objects, luminescence, the luminescence from rocks is another way of dating. We didn't have any of those technologies. We do have them.
Yeah, good
so I think
point.
the speculation is 100 years.
I gotta start cooking for myself again. I do, but not like all the time.
That's the case that's made. I get
I
it.
used to in
But
China.
I
I
think
did.
Göbekli Tepe is such an important site, and I know for sure, because I spent 3 days with Klaus Schmidt, who was the original excavator of Göbekli Tepe, that underneath that
Toad.
there are
This is for
dozens
Toad.
of
This one.
huge unexcavated stone
Oh my God.
circles with enormous megalithic pillars on them, all under the ground, waiting to be excavated, and the decision appears to have been made not to excavate them. And I do find that slightly suspicious. I do find it odd. I think the site has got such an important role. It's such an iconic site that to just stop the excavation,
It was a bit
or
wide.
to only continue it in a very small way,
It was a bit
isn't
wide.
satisfactory.
When you say
It's up to God
suspicious,
now.
what would
That was probably
be
one of my best runs.
motivation
Fuck
for
me. That was too wide though.
discontinuing That kind of excavation.
Oh,
other than
man.
the fear of destroying
Is there a
things?
God? Like, please.
I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist.
Please do. Jump right in.
But there is a there
Fuck
is-
me. I
there
think
is
it was
a-
the ending.
I've noticed that it isn't just attacks on me that certain archaeologists are making. It's also attacks on other specialists. For example, Danny Hillman-Matabajaji, who is the geologist who
Oh, what's up, Mike?
attention to the mystery of
I would say
Pangkal in
45.
Indonesia, which appeared in the first episode of season 1.
Oh yeah, we have Michael Jackson
The
too.
possibility that this site is more
Hey
than
man.
27,000
Gee.
years old, that we're looking
Yeah,
at a
like
pyramidal
45.
structure that has had several phases.
Aw,
of work
thanks,
on it,
man.
but
Hope
that
so.
The earliest phases go
That was a
back
really good
deep
run. The ending was
into the last
kind
ice
of
age.
bad.
He managed to
Man.
publish a peer-reviewed paper.
I
on
think
this,
I
but
think I lost at the
unfortunately for
ending.
Danny,
That
he
last
appeared on my
that
show.
last quarter.
And that led archaeologists to dive in on him, and there was a ganging up of archaeologists.
Because it was a boost
Complaints were
and
made
a
to
perfect
the
gate.
peer-reviewed journal that published it, and finally they
I'm sure
retracted.
maybe you saw
They
it.
retracted his paper without any good reasons. I've got a major article.
That was
by
one of my
Dan
better
on the website
runs.
explaining what happened.
It wasn't
It's
my
like-
best, but
It's like
it's definitely
we
top
don't
10.
want too much attention.
It's definitely
brought
top
to
10
this.
run there.
Let's crush it. Let's crush it right now. The same thing is happening with the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. An enormous amount of attacks are being made on that hypothesis,
man.
rather than considering it as an interesting explanation for the cataclysms at the end of the Ice Age. A lot of people are just focused on trying to destroy it in every way possible. And I can't help wondering.
I feel like we're
maybe
close.
there's
Let's
some
go. This is
truth,
it. This is for my
deep truth,
1109. Let's
to
go,
this,
baby.
that there was a cataclysm, that there was an ancient apocalypse, something really horrific.
This is the one.
Maybe
feel
it's
it.
a cyclical disaster.
This is it.
Maybe it's coming around again.
Let's clutch it.
This is this is something that would lead any government to want to avoid panic, to suppress,
Yeah, I
to
don't
cover
think
up
it's it.
these issues.
Maybe
So
it
that
might
would
be
the conspiracy
because it was the
theory. I'm not
boost
saying I'm
before
buying
the
it, but I'm
gate, you
saying
know.
it's possible.
Give me
Would
one more.
also
Come on.
a conspiracy be that they recognized
Looked
that
up too
some
early
of
there.
the area around Göbekli Tepe was
Looked
overstill,
up too early there, anyways.
and they decided the archaeologists didn't want to confront it, and they put a stop to it.
That's also possible. That's also possible.
Yeah,
But
45.
in their favour and to their credit, the excavation of that whole area around not
I think we've had like
Tepe itself,
10
but
this
other
session.
neighbouring sites, Karahan Tepe is
This
known.
this stream.
Turkish archaeologists, it's interesting, are calling this now a civilization. They're calling it the Tas Tepe.
We started at like
civilization,
35.
Stone Hills civilization.
Now we're
They're
at
finding the
45.
same iconography, the
No
same
36
building
pause
patterns,
outs
not
though.
quite on the scale of Göbekli Tepe.
It's quite
Are
discouraging.
repeated all across the region. They extend all the way down to the south of the Jordan Valley, to Jericho. The ancient site of Jericho is part of
Right.
that lost or emerging civilization that appeared at the end of the Younger Dryas. Cyprus is another example I was mentioning about how it was settled in what appeared to have been planned, organized settlement events near the end of the last ice age. Again, you find that same iconography that you find at Göbekli Tepe turning up there.
Which
as well.
iconography specifically?
The tendency to use T-shaped pillars, to use certain designs like a V-shaped necklace, this kind of iconography, and the structures, these circular structures, semi-subterranean structures that are so characteristic of Göbekli Tepe. They're found there as well. They're found all across the region. Jericho in the Jordan Valley is absolutely intriguing. There's a massive tower there, which again dates back right to the end of the last ice age. A huge megalithic tower with the world's oldest known megalithic stairway that runs up inside it. So what's emerging as a result? If Göbekli Tepe hadn't been found, none of this would have happened. But it's led to a widespread interest in the whole area. So while excavation may have stopped at Göbekli Tepe or may have slowed down, it is continuing elsewhere.
Hope you're doing well.
Across the region. And to be fair to archaeologists, we need to recognise that.
Is the size and scale of Göbekli Tepe unique in comparison to the ones that are around it?
Yes. So far, the ones that have been found, Göbekli Tepe is unique. And I think it's clear now that Göbekli Tepe itself was the end of a process, not the beginning of a process. It was something that marked, it was a marker. It was something that brought together the best of everything that had accumulated and created it in one place. And left it there, finally at the end, burying it, sealing it as a time capsule, which then was untouched for more than 10,000 years before Klaus Schmidt opened it up in 1996. I can't help feeling that's precisely what Göbekli Tepe is. It's a time capsule. It's a memorial to a lost time. And I think that what we're looking at in that whole area is the outcome of contact with an earlier, largely lost civilization. I think it passed on its cultural genes right there in that area of Turkey and down into the Jordan Valley and Cyprus. And not only there, also the Indus Valley civilization. It's incredible iconography which shows a man between two felines. It's a very striking image. You see a man and two tigers or leopards on either side of him, and he may be holding them apart.
Oh, what? How did I miss that?
What is this, a James?
What?
You can find it on the Gebel al-Arak knife handle from Egypt. You can find it from Sayburk, Sayburk, in Turkey. The man between two felines.
That does not sound like Toto,
bro.
bro.
Valley civilization right across in Pakistan on these steatite seals that they used to make, where again you see that same icon of the man between two felines. And it suggests that cultural ideas way back in the remote past were being spread around the world very, very rapidly. I can tell you the...
So how much of that area where Göbekli Tepe has been searched with LiDAR? Here it is. Here's the images. Look at that. Wow.
Yeah, there we go. That's Harappa. That's from the Indus Valley civilization.
Wow.
Man between two felines.
What do you think that supposedly represents?
Nobody knows what it represents, but what's intriguing is that it turns up in so many different places. But I'd like to find the just give me 1 second just to find something. I hope I'm online here. I am.
How many of the areas have been searched with LiDAR?
Hang on, Joe. Bear with me. Just
No
one-
worries, no worries.
1 minute. This is where I have to take my bloody glasses off.
You gotta go back and forth.
I'll show that Karen Tepe has some cool stuff that I don't think we've seen.
Whoa.
There's this huge skeletal figure. There's this one. 12
I
feet
thought that was
high, something
AI.
like that.
Kind
I swear to God.
similar to the Easter Island heads. His hog.
Confused me. 'Cause usually I see the user comment and then the stream elements, and then I just saw the user. I saw Toad, and I'm like, what?
Jamie, could I get plugged into the HDMI?
Sure. Do you need to?
Yeah.
Okay, pause please.
It is pretty insane, that tilde, man. That's pretty.
We're
I'm
back. Okay.
I'm proud of
find
that
these images
achievement.
so this is from Jamie. Maybe
The
you
AI
can find that,
chatbot may have been the
cyborg
best
relief
achievement of
figure.
like 2024.
Okay, it's on my.
Yeah.
It provides so much laughter.
This is about 10,000 years old. It's from
and
a site in
joy
the
and
area
memories.
of Göbekli Tepe, called Sayburg, and it's gone.
I should look at the stats.
And it's
Stream
a
element
clearly
might be
man
the
from
most
felines. And
number one
interestingly,
chatter.
He's holding his dick, exactly like that piece that you just showed from Karai Tepe. And then if we go on. Okay, so then the Indus Valley again.
Yeah, I'm controlling what's on the screen.
You are okay. So there's the man between two felines. Again, expand that.
So that particular image, is there any sort of a theory as to what they were trying, what that represented?
Human mastery of animals is the only one I've heard that's being suggested.
But it seems like they're trying to get him.
Well, it does in that case, rather than or that he's holding them.
Right.
He's holding them at bay.
Keeping them from getting each other.
Yeah, and then if you go down to the Egyptian one, which is the Gebel al-Arak knife handle, there it is. That's from ancient Egypt, pre-dynastic Egypt, same thing. And then the next one is from Tiwanaku in Bolivia. That's a redrawing from.
Oh
from
my
Tiwanaku
gosh.
in Bolivia.
I do not
It's a
agree
man
with what
between
is
two
said
felines.
in
So when I see
the
this
chat
kind of
by AI. I do
complicated
not take
image turning up
responsibility
all
for
around
what
the
AI
world, I can't
says.
help feeling that there's a remote
I think we should
source
definitely have
which is shared. It's
H-1B
not each
visas
culture
that exist.
representing or
We
influencing
should
the other.
definitely put
It's a remote
Americans
common source that
first.
they will share.
What's the last one from? Where's it from again?
From Tiwanaku in Bolivia.
Look, what do you think he's got in his hands?
Hey, I'm glad
Well, it
Ace
looks
is in
like two
Canada. I'm
felines
not gonna lie.
Right, but what are those things that are dangling down?
I
I'm reaping the
absolutely have no
rewards of
idea,
that.
and I'm not sure if anybody else
You got
does,
Ace in
although I'm
Canada.
reminded in that one of
Big
the
W.
handbags that we see in some of the figures from ancient
My
Sumer.
mom in Canada in
What
the
is
80s.
The thing on the left.
Again, I don't know, and I don't think anybody
Very
does.
strange. What are the? Why does he have steps on his chest and a wheel? Like, what is that? You know, what is that spiral in the center of his body?
Making Twitch chat
I
freaking
honestly
come
don't know
on.
the answer to that question.
Because, like, look, there's a geometric pattern.
Tremendous
See, it goes
resource
up and
people.
down with the steps,
Maple
and it
syrup.
repeats on both corners.
Keep
That
their
one
hockey.
where it
Come
steps
on.
up and the other side where it steps down.
Yeah,
Very strange.
it would be nice if there were written records from Tiwanaku.
Wouldn't that be
which told us
sweet?
what it was about, but unfortunately there aren't.
Just
Um,
very, very bizarre.
So what I'm saying is we're seeing a sudden emergence of something that is being recognized as a civilization in Turkey just immediately after Göbekli Tepe, around the time of Göbekli Tepe. And we're seeing it in the Jordan Valley, and we're seeing it in the Indus Valley, and we're seeing it in South America as well. The same iconography keeps on repeating, and I don't think it's a coincidence.
The area where the Olmec are, have there ever been LiDAR excavations or?
I wouldn't be surprised if there have. Villa Hermosa, the sort of central of the Olmec area, is a very highly populated area. It's been heavily developed.
Yeah,
The
that
areas
does
where
sound like
LiDAR
what
has been
DeSantis
used
would say to that
in Mexico,
question.
Central America, and Guatemala has been finding thousands of Mayan ruins that nobody knew were there before. Again, under the jungle canopy. LiDAR has
Trump
been
is a lot
used
more
extensively, in the Yucatan,
offensive.
Mexico,
The AI bot of
Guatemala
Trump is way
as
more
well. Whether
divisive.
it's been used, there we go.
Hundreds of
And
Let's just
all
say
that
that
ceremonies-
Trump is more
This is all-
divisive
thank you,
and
Lion.
exclusive. Let's just say that.
stuff was there
Those are the
all
adjectives
along,
I'm going to use.
and nobody knew.
Yeah, and of course, the Amazon rainforest is an even bigger rainforest than this, and what's hiding in it
Right.
is a mystery that needs to be
Guys.
solved in the coming years.
No, I'm not gonna say it.
if we're going to have any idea of our own past.
That's
I think
fine.
the Amazon is incredibly important. It's why I chose to focus season 2 of HW.
They opened a new Chipotle in Orleans here.
In terms of the quest for the origins
And I
of
went.
civilization, the Americas are
She
the
went
most
on like a
developed
date with my
Archaeologists
girlfriend.
have
We
looked
didn't
at.
pre-break up.
Define themselves as being
And
in favor of indigenous
it
people.
was just full of
and
people, man.
against any kind of supremacy.
Just
By and
fucking
large, they
full
look
of
to
people.
Europe
It's like,
and
where did
to
all
the
these
Middle
people
East
come
as the
from?
origins of civilization, and don't consider that
That's all I'm gonna say.
and what we're trying to show is that the story of the Americas is
But
much
seriously,
older than it's been, and that there are mysteries here. that have
like,
never
it's,
been
like we can't
explored
have fucking
by
nice things.
archaeology.
How
It's
much
fucking
of
all these
the
people
Amazon has been
just
explored
fucking
A very tiny proportion.
ruining
I
everything.
worked with the team who are doing this, and they're solely in the province of Acre, in the southwest of Brazil, and they haven't worked in other areas. What would be needed, I'm hoping some amazing philanthropist will come forward, and if such a philanthropist will come forward, I can connect him with the people who are doing the work in Acre, that we have a LiDAR survey of the whole
For what?
Amazon.
Some fucking
That's what I
shitty
want to
fast
see.
food Mexican
And
food?
it wouldn't be a billion-dollar project because it can be done with drones now. It could be relatively cost efficient.
That would be incredible. Just imagine what's out there.
Yeah. And we have the tech. We can do that. We can do a LiDAR survey of the Amazon.
Where specifically did they think that lost city of Z was, and did they try to explore that yet?
I think it was in Ecuador or Colombia. I can't remember. That was Percy Fawcett, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Kind of echo of that earlier discovery of lost
Yeah.
cities in the Amazon. These stories won't go away because there is a hidden past in the Amazon.
Right.
And because there were cities in the Amazon. And God knows what it was like before
Fuck
the
me.
Spanish came along and destroyed everything.
God, it seems like that has to be discovered. I mean, that has to be looked at. But just specifically, if we could just find that the lost city of Z was a real place.
If we could find it was a real place,
Yeah.
I wish we could.
I mean, just finding lost city of Z is a
Percy
legendary city in the
Fawcett.
Amazon rainforest, and British explorer Percy Harrison Fawcett
Mato
believed was
Grosso
Mato Grosso.
in Brazil.
Theorized that the city was a refuge for people fleeing the destruction of Atlantis. Whoa. That its wisdom could still be found there. Wow. Wow.
I think we're going to find the lost city of X and Y as well,
I bet.
and W,
Maybe ABC.
and
D.
possibly ABC and D too. Yeah.
Maybe a bunch, yeah. It's, at the very least,
Wow, I fucked it up.
it's clear that
Damn
not
it.
enough is known.
Not
What
enough
the
is
fuck?
known, and I think it's right and proper that we have curiosity about our past,
What?
and I think it's unfortunate that people, including myself, who express that curiosity without any dogma, but simply are mystified by problems from the past, are so likely to get slapped down and face this abusive power grab by archaeology, who are saying the past is ours, you may not intrude here, we will define you as a pseudoscientist, we will call you a hoaxer and a liar. I defy anyone out there to find a single statement I've made that is a lie. And a lie is a knowing untruth.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I have never, ever told knowingly an untruth. What a stupid thing to do that
Right.
would be. That would scupper my whole work. I may have made some honest mistakes. Everybody does, including the most godlike archaeologists. But I have never.
Oh, that was so
told an
shitty.
untruth, and I never would.
Of course not. The interesting thing, though, is I
But
think
seriously, I'd like an example because this is thrown at me so many times.
you can't be responding to the haters all the time. It's bad.
But they include archaeologists.
I know, but the
Well,
reality is most people
defi-
aren't listening anymore.
Define the untruth.
I don't think that's working anymore because I think enough people have seen your work and enough people
Yeah.
have heard you talk and they know that you're reasonable and intelligent and
Yeah.
that there's something there.
Yeah.
And the more people look at these images and the more people hear people like Flint just out and out lie to try to dismiss these things.
It was most unfortunate. I think he let archaeology down very badly in the way that he manipulated that debate. And I'm sorry it's taken me so long to come back with the fact checking, but it was necessary to do. And I'm very grateful to a number of completely independent, separate individuals on the internet who've drawn attention to some of what Flint did.
Yes.
One calls himself illegitimate scholar, and the other calls himself debunking.
Yeah.
And they got into this material very, very early and helped me to understand how I'd been duped by this material. Because I took it all at face value. at the
Well,
time.
that's the beautiful thing about the internet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that are very invested in these ideas and exploring them, and they also find it very uncomfortable that they're being confronted by these scholars, these people that are supposed to be the ones that are the experts in this area, that are dismissing things that shouldn't be dismissed, that are lying about statistics, just try to diffuse your argument.
Yeah. And there's also that feeling of just being patronized by the so-called experts. Nobody wants to be patronized.
No.
And feel that somebody else regards them as too stupid to make up their own mind on something.
Right. And they think that somehow or another that exploring these ideas dismisses the legitimate work that archaeologists have already done, which I don't think it does at all.
Not at all. Archaeologists have done some fantastic work.
Yeah.
And it's really important work. What I've realized is that there's almost two different mindsets at work here in looking at the past. I think archaeology is very determined to demonstrate that it's a science, that it's a hard science, that it's completely rational, that it's all based on scientific method, and anything that sounds unscientific, which include myths, must be
Timber sledges
and
gliding
also,
over
I do
lubricated
find
surfaces.
archaeology, and it may be true in other sciences
Interesting.
as well, are very reluctant to use the
AI goes
imagination.
crazy,
The
man.
imagination is seen as a,
AI
as a
has
deadly
crazy
force.
ideas.
Whereas I think imagination is a really important thing in interpreting the past. We should.
How does it say it
the
so
possibilities rather than coming
decisively?
into what we confront with a closed idea.
That's not what
We
Graham
should
thinks at
consider
all.
How it might have been, what might have happened. Let's use our imagination and think about this. Think what all this means. Think what that common iconography all around the world means, rather than just saying, "Oh, it's a coincidence."
Well, in some places that's your only option, like the Olmec culture, where we don't know. Well, we have these faces that don't look like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's confusing. They look like maybe they're from Polynesia.
Yeah,
maybe
they could.
they're from Africa.
Yeah, could be Polynesia, could be Africa, and then there are these other faces, which in the video I've put out, I've shown some of these. It's not just myths.
How did I miss that?
Bearded
Like, how did I even miss that
in
lock
the
shot?
Americas, which
What?
Bill and other archaeologists say were all concocted and invented by the Spaniards. We discussed that during the debate. I have a real problem with that, because that is patronizing to the indigenous people. I think the myths were there amongst the indigenous people, and I think the Spaniards saw how they could use them, how they could manipulate them, but I don't think they made up the myths and somehow imposed them upon the indigenous people, who then believed that they were their own myths. I don't think they were that stupid. They knew what their myths were.
Well, my concern with that line of thinking is that we've seen evidence of that sort of destruction of the real history of people in America, with how they forced Native Americans onto reservations and forced them into speaking English and forced them into learning Christianity. That there was a concerted effort to erase their history and their culture, and that the conquerors imposed that on the people that were there.
But this is a kind of conspiracy theory that's being proposed, that the Spanish, Cortez and Pizarro and others who were involved in the conquest of the Americas, that they got together and they created a fiction, and then they made the indigenous people believe that fiction, while accepting everything else that the indigenous people believed. That was a fiction. There's no document which says that Spaniards conspired to create these stories. I believe that when we find them in Mexico, when we find them in Peru, when we find them in Colombia, when we find them in Bolivia, we are looking at indigenous traditions. And I have no doubt that the Spanish saw those traditions and said, we can use this, we can take advantage of this, we can exploit this, but I don't think they made up the traditions.
So it's possibly a myth of people that came over on ships that look different.
Yeah. It's about that. That's about what it comes to.
When you hear about things like the Lost City of Z, when you hear about all the different times where European explorers did make it to the Americas and spread their diseases, like myths from those folks too. So who's to think that there wasn't multiple versions of that happened all throughout history?
Yeah, I suspect.
If it happened in the 1400s, it probably happened a long, long time ago as well.
Yeah.
The whole thing is so interesting that it never ends. And every now and again, a new discovery comes along that pushes back the date of humans in specific areas. I mean, look at the Denisovans. They only found out about them in, what, 2010 or something like that?
Very recently. I think Santa and I went to Denisova Cave in 2013.
Crazy.
Something like that.
So a whole new branch.
Yeah, previously unknown. And there's so much that's unknown about our past.
Oh, I know what I wanted to bring up to you today because I saw this online. Maybe you could find it before I can pull it up, Jamie, because you're that good. But there's a scientist that believes there's reason to believe that those hobbit people in the island of Flores, that they exist currently. So this was, the hobbit-like species of early humans may still be living in the jungles of Indonesia.
Interesting theory.
Yeah. Well, that's another branch of the human chain. That when did they find out about this? It wasn't that long ago either.
It certainly wasn't. I think you're looking around 2000s, 2010.
Oh, that was a Ayola, that
very
one.
recent discovery.
I wonder what this.
That was like the ideal
latest
lock
find
shot in
Tuesday
theory.
Journal of Nature Communications following the 2016 discovery of tiny arm bone and teeth. There's something that these people are considering. I don't know why. You see, is there any article that says they consider they're still alive today? That's what this one is. But that one, no.
It's like a small version of Bigfoot.
Yeah, this is. Okay. Someone sent this to me.
Yeah.
So why do they think that there's might still roam? Well, this is just because of anecdotal stories, right? Because there have been multiple stories that people that live in the deep rainforest have said that they've encountered these.
Why not? Why not? Why should it be impossible? It has a parallel with the Bigfoot story, of course, a different size of creature. But maybe creatures have survived, which we think are extinct.
Especially small populations of them that are very remote and very difficult to get. There are reports of sighting by more than 30 eyewitnesses, all of whom I spoke with directly, and I conclude the best way to explain that they told me
Wasn't
what they
pace.
told me is a non-sapiens hominid
Tried to YOLO
has
the
survived
ending just
on
to
Flores
like squeeze it out.
present or very recent times. Yeah.
No boost.
Oh.
Bad game.
Imagine maybe AI could decipher their language. Imagine they found them. You know how nutty it would be if they found a little 3-foot tall hairy human being that's still alive? Oh my goodness.
Just for clarity, he made this claim and put out a book. So I'd be like, come read my book. You know?
Well, it's a good thing to do if you have a good theory.
I mean,
write a
for
book.
sure.
I know what you're saying, though. I know what you're saying. Yeah. I hope it's true, of course. Of course.
Of course.
Because it's fun. Yeah. It's fun to hope it's true. Oh, it's fun.
That's what I'm so grateful to the universe for, and so grateful to my readers for, is that I have been given this opportunity to live a fun life.
Oh, yeah.
And to travel the world and to investigate mysteries and to put across my point of view on those mysteries. I couldn't do any of that if it wasn't for my readers. I've never had sponsorship. I've never sought anybody to fund me to do anything. I started out massively in debt. I've got to the place now where I can travel wherever I want and explore places, and that's all down to my readers. It's not just me, it's me and my readers that are making this possible, and I'm enormously grateful to them. And these days my viewers as well.
You're a very lucky man. I was going to say
I'm
that
blessed.
earlier when you were talking about I've never taken a vacation. Like, oh, you haven't, but your whole life's a vacation.
Exactly. That's why I don't see, I'm 74 years old now, I don't see myself retiring. The idea of retirement is just out of the question.
You try to retire, I'll go find you. I'm going to go grab you, drag you out.
I love
Give you
doing
some vitamins.
I love doing what I do.
Yeah.
And I hope it's contributed something useful to the world rather than just flim-flam.
Oh no, it most certainly has. It most certainly has. You know, I first found out about you because of Fingerprints of the Gods, and one of the things that I found most fascinating when I started going into your work was the idea that the Ark of the Covenant exists in Ethiopia.
That's what brought me into this field. Before that, I wrote all about current affairs.
That story is so nuts, and it sounds so ridiculous, and people you go, what? The Ark of the Covenant's real? But then when you go into the history of these people that lived there, and they all suffered radiation poisoning, and it's like, wait a minute.
Cataracts over their eyes. And let's not forget that there's an indigenous.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a weightlifting stream in like maybe 10 minutes or less.
In Ethiopia, the Falashas, who have their own story about how the Ark of the Covenant.
I'm gonna play this for like 10 more minutes and then
from the Ethiopian
can do a weightlifting
the
stream.
the glory of kings. That's why I got into this.
And I'll probably play this maybe tomorrow.
Was on my beat, and I just
Maybe
kept on
tonight.
coming across this story, and I realized it was central to
Probably
my
tomorrow.
culture. And I decided to investigate.
But then
it.
Sunday I gotta make the presentation.
Which was published in 1992, and that's what set me on the
I
path
might
to
work on the presentation
fingerprints of
tomorrow.
gods
I
and
got
everything
I got an interview
followed
with
that.
So
a school in Saudi Arabia for a biology
Guardian.
teacher position.
This is a monk.
For
who's
high school
appointed.
students, I gotta make a fucking
The place
presentation
is
on
actually
DNA
in the
replication
province of Tigray in northern
and
Ethiopia.
meiosis.
It's a massively interesting place. Aksum has these huge granite.
I
stelae.
don't remember
They're
any of
very
that. I gotta
similar
use
in many ways to
Google.
ancient Egyptian obelisks. They're a bit different in shape, but same sort of height. Some of them going 110.
Like I don't
feet
remember
high,
meiosis at all.
cut out of solid granite, right up there in the highlands of Ethiopia. And then they have an ancient church, the Church of St. Mary, Cathedral actually of St. Mary of Zion, where the Ark apparently was kept for hundreds and hundreds
So I
of
can do
years.
that.
But before that
I'll
it
probably
was
do that
kept
tomorrow
elsewhere.
now that I'm talking
And
about
now
it.
it's been moved into a chapel.
You know we do. I think for our weightlifting stream, I'm gonna watch a video on
And
meiosis.
that chapel is guarded by armed men. The whole town is an armed camp.
exactly
that
what
is-
we're
that
gonna
is
do.
Protecting what they believe to be the Ark of the Covenant, but it's guarded particularly by one guy, who is the official guardian of the Ark, and he's elected by other monks to be the guardian of the Ark, and several of them have run away when they get that election, because once you're elected as the guardian of the Ark, when the previous one has died, you're going to be kept in that chapel forever. You'll never be allowed to leave it. So they're close to whatever this object is. They're close to it, and I met 3 of them over a succession of years, because their mortality is once they're appointed, they die very soon.
Oh, like that.
And they all had these cataracts
Okay.
over their eyes, and they all blame.
That
the
was really good
object in
law.
that
It was pretty
chapel,
good.
whether or not
It wasn't
it's the
really
Ark,
good, but it was better
for-
than what I
for-
was
for
doing.
causing their blindness.
So I was
it's,
coming more at an
no
angle with that one.
is going in there and trying to get to the bottom of it. They won't let you.
They won't let you. They won't let you.
Can
To
we
a certain
bribe 'em?
no.
It might be 53.
What the hell is that?
Yeah.
What's in there? I mean, if we really find out the Ark of the Covenant was an actual object,
Wow, insane.
I think it was an actual object.
and you think it was some nuclear something or another?
I don't know what it was. I think it's what is rightly described as an out-of-place artifact. Because if you look at the description in the book of Exodus, the very precise dimensions of it, I think in modern terms we'd say 3 feet 9 inches long by 2 feet 3 inches high and wide. It's got a layer of gold, it's got a layer of wood, it's got another layer of gold. It's very precisely specified, like a blueprint in the book of Exodus. And then it does all this stuff. It shoots out jets of fire and kills completely innocent people. It kills 50,000 Philistines in the city of Ashdod when they briefly capture it from the Israelites and make the mistake of treating it like a tourist object, and they open the Ark
Oh, what am I doing?
to look inside, and suddenly everybody in that city is dying, and what they're dying of is cancerous tumors. This is described in the Old Testament. So it's intriguing that this object is so precisely specified and is reported to have done these terrible things.
I tried the Super YOLO lookup.
Well, we know that I believe Ethiopia has a very strong claim to it. That's all I can say, because I've not seen it myself. I've been right outside of the door of that sanctuary chapel several times. But
Did you bring a Geiger counter?
no, that would be a good thought.
Yeah. Imagine it was going nuts as you got close.
That would be a good thought.
I mean, it's not like it's going to be, if it's radioactive, it's not like it's going to be contained just to this one small area. You're going to have traces of it that leak out.
It's true. That would be a good way to look
Especially
at
if people are getting cataracts from being in the room with it.
it. Yeah.
And so 3 different people you talk to have cataracts
Yeah,
from that.
yeah, and they all blame the Ark, and one of them, it's a resonant phrase which sticks in my memory. I asked him why, and he
Like,
said,
what?
"The Ark
Why? Like, come on,
is a
man.
thing of fire." Just that.
Did he describe it to you?
He did describe it as a box, rather like the biblical description, unsurprisingly. But
Did he
what-
describe what it looked like the outside of it?
gold,
Gold.
gold,
Wow.
and of course gold is a very good insulator against radiation. I don't want to go too far down this track. To me, the
Too speculative.
the fascinating thing is that
Pretty
Ethiopia
nice
is the only
ending.
country in the world that actually claims to have the Ark of the
What was that
Covenant.
dumb
But it's
stuck at the end at the
in
second gate? It was so
that there's
dumb,
much
man.
to support that argument,
Like,
particularly
why did it just randomly
for
stuck
Elijah's
there?
Ethiopian Jews and their very ancient traditions about how they got to Ethiopia in the first place. In context of all of that, I think Ethiopia has a very good claim, very interesting claim, and that's why I wrote a book about it.
that one to me. It's just like we know where it is.
Yeah.
That one to me is so crazy that someone is keeping that information from the rest of the humans.
Yeah.
Because if we found out the Ark of the Covenant was in fact a real object and we know where it is and it does match the description of the Bible, that kind of changes everything. Now all of a sudden the Bible is not just stories and myths. The Bible is some sort of a historical record.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget that one of the world's best-known flood myths also comes from the Bible, which is the flood of Noah.
Right.
Which again is part of this worldwide tradition, of which I am absolutely convinced Atlantis should be understood as a part of that worldwide tradition of a global flood and the loss of a former civilization. And again, it's one of the reasons why I've done the work I've done over these years.
So when you're doing season 2, what did you learn from doing season 1 that you applied to season 2? Was there anything different about the way you went about it?
Definitely. I had learned from the criticisms of archaeologists, and one of the first things that became very clear to me, and they're absolutely right, is we need more indigenous voices in this series, and that's what we've made sure to do. We have an amazing indigenous archaeologist from Easter Island. We spent quite a bit of time filming in Easter Island, and it's a strong... This series doesn't do country by country episodes. It's all merged together. Different bits of the story come together in each episode. But a good chunk of it is on Easter Island, and there Sonia Hoa Cardinali is an indigenous Easter Islander. Her married name is Cardinali because she married an Italian guy. And she gave us incredible material on Easter Island, and she revealed that she and her team have found what are called banana phytoliths. Now, phytoliths are a minute part of the banana plant. They've excavated them from a crater in Easter Island, and they've found that those are 3,000 years old. Now, this is interesting for two reasons. Firstly, bananas do not propagate naturally. You can't get bananas to Easter Island without human beings bringing them there. That's how they got there. And secondly, the date that she's found 3,000-year-old banana phytoliths in Easter Island blows out of the water the notion that Easter Island was only settled 1,000 years ago or less, which is the current idea of archaeology. Again and
Oh my
again,
god, imagine I just fucking clutch a 52 right now.
brought real important
I feel so good
Amongst
lifting
those
weights, oh my god.
geoglyphs, in Brazil, we had
Be like
a member of the Upper Rina people.
the lift of
who
the century.
is a caretaker for those geoglyphs, and he talked to us about what is special to him about the geoglyphs, about how this is a sacred place to his tribe, and how they still gather there today, and how they understand that it's somehow connected to the journey to the next world, to the journey of life after death. And that then rings a bell in my mind of that whole idea of a journey to the afterlife and the portal through which we pass into that other realm. We find that right there in Brazil.
So if the Easter Island, if the island was settled at least 3,000 years ago, do we know where from?
Well, 3,000 years ago, you're still within the period of the Polynesian expansion. This is not the Ice Age. This is more recent.
Right.
It's early in the Polynesian expansion rather than late. The Easter Island was seen as one of the last places that the Polynesians got to. This new evidence is suggesting it may have been one of the first places that the Polynesians got to. But the question that arises is, did they find the Moai already in place when they came there even 3,000 years ago? And I think there's a lot of evidence for that. I think that this is going to make archaeologists absolutely furious with me. But I hope that I'm paying full respect to indigenous traditions. We had
Mama Maboose,
an
please.
amazing
Like, come on, please.
Easter Island elder
Please.
who told us the tradition of the lost land of Hiva. Easter Island has its own flood myth. They say that there was a huge land in the Pacific, far, far away, called Hiva, and that it was Hiva, and that it was destroyed in a flood cataclysm, and that there were survivors, specifically 7 wise men. That's another thing.
Not a good ending.
It's found in ancient Sumer, it's found in ancient Egypt. It's
Not
found
a good
in
ending.
Specific seven wise men who came and settled Easter Island after this great cataclysm. So it's great to have indigenous testimony on that. And then you have the mystery of the Easter Island script, How did that happen? How come this tiny island, which only ever had a population of a few thousand, did something that is normally only done by big civilizations, which was create a written script? But they have a script, the Easter Island script, and it's written on wooden boards. And we learned that these were the boards we see today, none of which, by the way, are in Easter Island now. They're all in museums around the world. They themselves were copies of earlier wooden boards that wore out. And these things go back far into the remote past as far as the indigenous people of Easter Island are concerned. To have a fully formed, elaborate script, which nobody can interpret today, you have to remember the tragic history of Easter Island. There was a point where Easter Island's population was reduced to just 11 people. And it was reduced to 11 people by Peruvian slave raids. They came and slaved the people of Easter Island. And they took them to work in Peru and elsewhere in the Pacific. Eventually there was a movement to restore them to their homeland. And gradually people came back. But at one point its population was reduced to 11. All the elders were wiped out, those who were the memory carriers. And so what's left now is just a hint of a memory of these things. But they speak with awe of these tablets with the script on it. And to me, that is a sign again that there's something wrong with our understanding of Easter Island. How can we explain that this tiny little place produces its own written language? Why would it even need a written language when you could walk across the island in 3 hours? It wouldn't need to communicate in that way, and yet it had its own script.
And the script, can we see what it looks like? Can you find the Easter Island script, Jamie?
If you look up the word Rongo Rongo, R-O-N-G-O, Rongo Rongo tablets.
One of the things that's interesting about AI is that they believe that AI is going to be able to determine or decipher, rather, a bunch of different things that we currently can't.
Hello.
Oh, wow.
That's a good point, Joe.
There's some curious
Using AI to
similarities
translate
to
old
the
text.
script, which has also not been deciphered. And let's hope AI can decipher both of them.
Look at that. That's
and the way it runs,
Pretty good idea.
is you read from left to right along the top row, then you go from right to left along the next row, then you go from left to right along the next row, and so on and so forth. A sort of snake-like.
How do they know that?
Because that's one of the memories that's being preserved by the Easter Islanders, and because of the way they all run along.
And what do they think it represents?
According to Leo, the elder who we talked to in Easter Island, it contains memories of the past. It contains memories of the past in Easter Island, instructions on how to navigate, information about the stars, and information about how to live as a community.
But in a language that we don't know.
Nobody knows it. All we have is an oral tradition, which itself is very fragmented and very faint because of that reduction of Easter Island's population to just 11 people, and the fact that the elders who were, within historical times, able to read these tablets were all wiped out.
How did they decipher cuneiform?
Cuneiform, I think, because of its relationship to later languages, which were known. And that's cuneiform is a writing system. We find the earliest version, I think, amongst the Sumerians and then in later Babylonian society as well. But when you have a language and you have a language that it's related to that you can read, or where you have a text in two different languages but it's the same text, then you're in a place where you can begin to translate it. That's what the Rosetta Stone does in ancient Egypt, because we have it in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, but we also have it in Greek. And that's why suddenly the code of the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs was cracked, because of the Rosetta Stone. Well, there isn't a Rosetta Stone for the Easter Island script or for the Indus Valley script.
Boost, please.
But I think in the case of cuneiform,
this might be it.
Something similar, some context to place it in.
So the Easter Island, these enormous statues, one of the things that they found I don't know when they started doing this, they dug deeper and deeper and deeper and found out that the heads that are above the surface are just a tiny part of it. So do you think that it's just natural erosion that covered up everything else?
No.
You think it was
I think it's a very complicated
It's gonna be
issue.
fucking close, man.
The issue of erosion.
Conservative stairs, though. The stairs are too conservative. It's gonna be really, really fucking close.
Over time. And what we with these Easter Island heads. I was fortunate to know, there we go. And I was just going to say, I was fortunate to know Thor Heyerdahl, and there he is, in the blue safari suit, standing at the shoulder of
Come on, man.
Of the Easter Island Moai. And you can see that the dark bit is the bit that was above ground. And then they
Fuck.
dig down and they find that it goes down 30 feet underground, this enormous thing. And this is not as a result of,
Damn it.
being exposed by erosion. This had to be excavated in order to reveal
Was it the end? Was it the
And the
stairs?
issue
I don't
is,
know,
on
man.
this tiny island, how much? If this thing is only
Oh,
700 years old, which is something that archaeologists often say, 700 or 1,000 years old. If it's only that old, how do you get 30 feet of sedimentation on this tiny island in just 700 years? It looks like a much longer period would be required to create that depth of sedimentation.
So how much time do you think, I mean, has there been speculation, like if it just natural layers of sediment being dropped down, how long would it take to cover something?
Well, this is where I'd like to defer to the work of Dr. Robert Schock.
That might have been my fastest run right there, that one,
We
maybe.
invited Robert Schock to join us in season 2 of Ancient Apocalypse, but he declined. I think that's unfortunate because I think Robert Schock has done breakthrough work on Easter Island, and it's Robert Schock who first realized that this is a problem. This deep burial of these statues by natural sedimentation is a problem. It's a chronological problem that speaks to these statues being much older than we imagine they are.
Is Robert Schock declining because of the criticism that he received about the Temple of the Sphinx?
I'm not sure why. I've always regarded Robert as a good friend, but he and I have not spoken since 2015. Well, I would love to speak to Robert.
Does he try not to talk to you?
And I take every opportunity to express my admiration for him. And Robert has been very brave. He is a credentialed geologist, and he has stuck his neck out on the Sphinx. And a lot of people want to cut his head off for doing that. And I appreciate his courage, and I appreciate his openness of mind and his willingness to get into this. But I don't know. Somewhere between 2013, we were still good friends. We traveled to Gunung Padang together in 2013.
What year did he do the podcast, Jamie? He did our podcast
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah.
I want to say it was around 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
6 years ago? Okay. So 2018. Maybe that's why I stopped being a friend.
No, I don't know why it is. Maybe I did something that offended him. Sometimes I can be very unpleasant and can be very angry.
You're a nice guy.
Well, we're all nice guys, but we all have a dark side, and sometimes I am very harsh and very I don't think I was with Robert. I don't understand what the problem is between us. He and I disagree over the cause of the Younger Dryas cataclysm. Robert Schock believes that it was a massive solar outburst that brought this catastrophe about, and he focuses on the end of the Younger Dryas, 11,600 years ago. I'm more of the view that the Comet Research Group is right, and that we're looking at the effect of largely of airbursts of large cometary fragments right across the surface of the Earth, which caused the Younger Dryas.
Why are they mutually exclusive?
But I don't see why. No, I don't see why they're mutually exclusive. I don't see why one has to write off the other. What we both agree on is that the Younger Dryas, between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, was an extraordinary global cataclysm, which changed everything, which extinguished all the megafauna of the Ice Age. We agree on that, and we agree that it likely wiped out a lost civilization of the Ice Age as well. We disagree on the mechanism, but I don't see why we shouldn't be friends for that. So, Robert, if you're listening, please let's work together, because we have many common enemies, and this is one of the problems with the alternative side is that there's a lot of infighting in the alternative side, and everybody's scrambling for their own bit of turf. Whereas the archaeological side, they're very unified in terms of attacking what they call pseudo-archaeology. They work as a team, and that teamwork makes them very efficient. We're very inefficient on the alternative side.
Well, I'm assuming, I shouldn't be assuming, but I'm assuming it's the criticism. Probably wants to keep his job, and he said everything he wants to say. And
I'm not sure. I think Robert is open to doing television. The fact is, we invited him to come to Easter Island and to give his point of view, and he declined, and therefore he must have a strong reason to do that.
Oh, I hope he still loves you. But
I hope so too.
Has anybody speculated about how much time it would take to cover those Easter Island statues with sediment?
Thousands of years.
Thousands. Thousands of years. 30 feet of dirt.
Remember, it's a small island.
Right.
It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
It's 2,000 miles from Tahiti and 2,000 miles from the coast of Peru.
It just seems strange that there's so many of those statues in this one area too. Like, what did
Hundreds
that
of them.
island
Hundreds of
signify? Like, why did they do that?
Well, it's what it calls itself. Te Pitu o Te Henua, the navel of the earth. It calls itself the navel of the earth, and it's not the only place. Delphi in Greece calls itself the navel of the earth. Heliopolis in Egypt, close to Giza, was a navel of the earth. Angkor Wat in Cambodia is a navel of the earth. Göbekli Tepe means the navel, the hill of the navel. This notion of navels of the earth, I think it's connected to an ancient geodetic survey of the earth, that there were certain anchor points that lines of longitude were drawn from by a civilization that didn't have our tech, didn't have our iPhones, but did explore the world, did sail the oceans. And I'm not surprised that we haven't found their ships, since we haven't found the ships for those who sailed to Australia or for those who sailed to Cyprus either. But it had abilities that we do not attribute to period of that time, and those abilities included the ability to calculate longitude, something that our civilization didn't crack until the 18th century. I suggest it's only a theory that these multiple navels of the earth around the world were fixed points on the earth where
I think I'm understanding the lock shot now.
connections were made. They were established places. So I do not think it's an accident that Angkor Wat is 72 degrees of longitude east of Giza.
I think I'm understanding it
Because the
now.
number 72 occurs in ancient myths all around and is strongly connected to this phenomenon called precession of the equinoxes, which, first of all, it changes the pole star. At the moment, the Earth wobbles on its axis, but it's a very slow wobble over 26,000 years. It changes the pole star. Now it's Polaris. In the past, it was Tuban. In the past, it was Draco. But now it's Polaris, because the extended north pole of the Earth is spiraling in the heavens, and it's pointing at different bits of space over a roughly 26,000 year period, 25,920 years to be exact. 1 degree of precession takes 72 years to unfold. That's why the fact that the relationship of the Great Pyramid to the Earth being on the scale of 1 to 43,200 is interesting. If it was on the scale of 1 to 57,000, I couldn't care less. But 43,200 is one of those numbers that we find in mythology and traditions all around the world. There's very solid scholarly backing for this in a book I've mentioned to you before, which is called Hamlet's Mill by Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschen. Giorgio was professor of history of science at MIT. They draw attention to this, that there appears to have been a very ancient knowledge of this obscure astronomical phenomenon, which our culture attributes to the Greeks and thinks only goes back a couple of thousand years. Santillana and Von Deschen were of the view that it goes back to what they called some almost unbelievable ancestor civilization of the remote past.
How could they even know that that was happening? Like, by what method could they make those calculations that the Earth wobbles on its axis every 26,000 years? Like,
you have to observe for more than one human lifetime. You've got to keep observing.
and then extrapolate the wobble?
Well, you may have to observe for hundreds of years in order to conclude that it's a wobble is another thing. But to conclude that the skies are changing at a regular fixed rate, that's going to take observation over a few hundred years. 72 years is one human lifetime. In that 72 years, the precessional shift would be the equivalent of the width of your finger held up to the horizon. Very hard to note. But if you extend it for several hundred years, it'll be very clear that something is going on. And what's going on is the constellation that rises behind the sun, particularly notable at key moments of the year: the summer and winter solstice, and the spring and autumn equinox, and the age in which we live. As anybody, of course, astrology is another one of those things that archaeologists despise.
Yeah.
But as anybody who follows astrology will know, we live in the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and that's because the sun on the spring equinox is, within the next 150 years, is going to move entirely out of Pisces, where it sits at the moment, and is going to move into Aquarius. The age of Pisces, with Pisces housing the sun on the spring equinox, began around the time of Christ, about just over 2,000 years ago. Before that, it was the age of Aries. We have all this ram symbolism in ancient Egypt at that time. Before that, it was the age of Taurus, constellation of Taurus housing the sun. All of this is a process that unfolds at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. So when I find that the Great Pyramid models the Earth on a scale of 1 to 43,200, which is 72 times 600, I wake up and I think this is interesting. And when I find that Angkor, one navel of the Earth, is separated from Giza, another navel of the Earth, by 72 degrees of longitude, that rings another bell. And I think that's something curious and worthy of exploration.
I think we also, when we talk
All right, 10
about
more minutes, and then I'm
ancient
gonna
people
wait
studying the
lift.
sky, we think of the sky today, and our sky, unfortunately, is burdened by light pollution almost.
I know I said that like
any
an
other
hour ago.
civilization, it's very difficult
With that,
to see
oh, here we go.
stars,
This is the
whereas
rise.
they had none of that, and they were in constant awe of this thing that they could see every night, and they probably had a
Oh my
very
God, come
detailed
on.
understanding of where
Please,
everything was.
like, please, game.
You know, in a way that you're
Far more detailed than most people have today. But
right,
the-
because we don't have access to it unless you're in like deep, you know.
Wow, it's just
deep
so amazing.
wilderness.
Isn't it
And
just
with
so
a clear
amazing?
night sky,
The
we can
presence of
see
the
it.
sky in our lives, if we're living in a city, is close to zero.
Yeah.
It's not zero, but it's close to zero.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre detachment that is propagated by technology.
Oh, yeah. Very, very much
It's
so.
very weird, right? Because it's actually dangerous for us.
Yeah.
Because I think it makes us disconnected from the idea that we're connected totally to the universe, and that feeling of awe that you get when you see a completely star-filled night. I've talked about this before, but I'll say it again. I was in the observatory in the Big Island, Hawaii, and when you go up to the Keck Observatory, the sky, you go through the clouds, and when you get up to the top and you look, you can't believe that you can see it. You can't believe it. I've been there 3-4 times. Only once did we really catch it. The last time was pretty good, but one time we caught it perfectly where there was no moon in the sky and the sky was completely clear, and it was astounding.
Astounding.
You feel like it's a windshield and you are on a spaceship and you're flying through deep space. You see stars everywhere.
It's a beautiful way to put it. That's exactly what we are.
We're in a convertible. We're in a convertible spaceship flying through the universe. That's really what it is. And you don't see it every day because of light pollution. And I think it's one of the saddest things about our culture. It's incredible that you can go out at night and you can see and, you know, drive and go to your favorite restaurant, go to the movies and all kinds of nice stuff. But what we're trading off is literally our connection to this insanely beautiful thing that hypnotizes you with its awe. It just, you look at this, if you get to go camping on a night where you see everything, it's incredible. It's one of the greatest
Oh, those
things you could ever
stairs.
see.
If I had those
It
stairs
used to
on
be there
one of the
forever.
earlier
It
runs.
used to be how they lived their life.
Oh my god, I just YOLO the stairs. Not YOLO, but like, do it like that.
And that is why it's so crazy to say that a phenomenon like precession wasn't discovered until the Greeks about 2,200 years ago, because the ancients were living with those skies for thousands and thousands of years before, and they were paying very close attention to them. There's strong evidence that the constellations of the zodiac were not inventions of the Greeks either. I mean, in a sense, the constellations aren't inventions because they happen to be on the path of the sun. The zodiac are the constellations which roughly are in the place in the sky that the sun occupies through the course of the year. That's why we see them. But there's increasing evidence that the Greeks inherited that, and that the knowledge was very early, and it may well go back into the Upper Paleolithic. There's this incredible figure of Taurus in the Hall of Bulls at Lascaux Cave in France, one of those cave paintings, which shows the stars of the Pleiades above the shoulder of the bull, exactly where they should be.
What is the oldest version of astrology that we have?
Well, again, you have the official position on this, and you have the unofficial.
What's the official position?
Well, the official position is that it's something that developed during the time of the late Mesopotamians and the Greeks. This notion that somehow there was a connection between the sky, events in the sky and what happens to us. But I think it's much older than that. I think the idea that the sky in some way determines our destinies is a very ancient idea, not a recent idea, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's weird to think this. I don't mean to be selfish to the human race, but we would not be here. No human beings would be here if it were not for that whole vast universe out there. It would be wrong to say that the universe exists so that we can be.
Right.
But the fact is we would not be we're part of that huge cosmos. And you're right, it's forgetting that we're part of the cosmos, or regarding the cosmos as something that we must conquer, which is the modern mindset, which is most unhelpful.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by astrology, not like the newspaper astrology, like you're a Cancer, so that means this. But the idea that the time you were born, the place on Earth you were born, where you were conceived, that all these play a factor in your personality, and that this was somehow or another mapped out by people thousands and thousands of years ago. I know a lot of people like to dismiss it as myth, and I've been one of those people, but part of me wonders if there is some sort of an impact that, look, we know that the gravity from the moon affects the tides. We know that we're mostly water. We know that there's some sort of an effect that planets and gravity and stars must have on the entirety of the universe. And the idea that these very bizarre biological entities, that their personalities and their existence is in some way motivated, shaped, or at least influenced by the position in the stars in which they were born is very interesting. Because people studied that shit for a long time. If there was nothing to it, why have so many generations of people studied it?
I think it's a good question.
And what was the root of it? Like, how the hell did they figure that out?
Well, it must come from a place where we feel connected to the universe. And we feel that the universe influences us directly.
Right.
Not the way we look at it at the moment as sort of something out there that doesn't mean much to us, except that we're going to conquer it with spaceships.
Right.
And go to the moon. Go to planets and things like that. But to see it as an ever-present reality, we understand that we're affected by the climate on planet Earth. We understand we're affected by the weather, by the oceans, by the winds. They affect us. They affect our personalities. So why shouldn't we be affected by the broader universe that surrounds us?
Yeah, it does make sense, but I've never heard anybody explain it. Have you ever talked to like a legitimate, air quotes, astrologer?
No, I haven't. It's not been a central focus for me. My central focus has more been on the evidence for really precise ancient astronomy, particularly amongst the ancient Egyptians, but also fantastically advanced amongst the Maya in Mexico as well. And we have a big focus on the Maya in season 2 of Ancient Apocalypse. And I was fortunate, blessed, to have a brilliant archaeologist, Ed Barnhart, who joined me there in Palenque. And he's not sneering at me. He doesn't agree with everything I say. He's very clear on that. But he's not sneering at me. He feels that there's something useful being contributed by this approach.
And so is it generally agreed that there is a connection between the methods or the design of the construction and the correlation between star systems?
I don't follow the question quite.
Is it agreed by archaeologists that the reason why these things are constructed in a very specific direction and a very specific design, that it is mirroring the cosmos?
I think that archaeologists are very reluctant to accept the broader idea. They are willing, they can hardly deny that some structures are specifically aligned to the equinoctial rising point of the sun, in other words, due east. And other structures are aligned to the rising or the setting of the sun on the summer or the winter solstice. That cannot be denied. Serpent Mound in Ohio is a classic example of that, which is oriented precisely to the setting sun on the winter solstice. But the broader idea that, for example, positions of stars in the sky might be replicated on the ground, that's an idea that archaeology completely rejects. And that's where I would like to pay tribute to my dear friend Robert Bauval, who's been very ill for the last many years. But Robert Bauval brought us the Orion correlation. And my God, did archaeology descend upon him like a ton of bricks for just noticing that the 3 great pyramids of Giza are laid out on the ground in the pattern of the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And then when we work precession into the equation, we find that they're not laid out in the pattern of Orion's belt as it looked in 2500 BC when the pyramids are supposed to have been built. They're laid out in the pattern of Orion's belt in 10,500 BC, 12,500 years ago. So it's like a marker on the Giza Plateau, speaking to that age, just as Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe speaks to that age in the astronomical diagram on that pillar.
Which also means that they would have been aligned 35,000 years ago as well.
Yeah, that's right, because it's a cycle.
Yeah.
It goes back.
Then the Sphinx is another one of those, right?
Yeah, the Sphinx is another one. The Sphinx aligned with it was looking at the rising sun, and behind it the constellation of Leo 12,500 years ago. But if you go back 26,000 years before that, you'll find the same alignment occurring. It's a cycle. It's not a one-off event. It's a cycle that occurs every 26,000 years.
It's a mind blower.
It's a mind blower, and that's why John Anthony West, who I'm so glad you had him on your show
Had him on a couple times. Yeah.
before he passed. He was such a genius and such a funny guy.
I recommend that to everybody. The Magical Egypt, the 2 DVD series he had, they're amazing.
Yeah,
my wife hated them because I was watching them so often. So you watch this Egypt thing, and I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I probably watched it 30 times.
He was an absolute genius, and John was of the view that the Sphinx is more than 30,000 years old, rather than just 12,500 years old.
Well, that's what aligns so interestingly with Robert Schoch's analysis of the water erosion.
Mm-hmm.
That this is thousands of years of rainfall.
Yeah. That's the really important matter that Robert Schoch has brought to the table, which no other person has dared to do. Now, John Anthony West started that process. He was aware of a problem in the weathering of the Sphinx, but he wasn't quite sure what the problem was. He was following up some writings by a scholar called Schwaller de Lubix back in the 1920s and 1930s, who said something about water weathering on the Sphinx. And so John brought Robert Schoch there to Giza, and Robert Schoch immediately recognized the weathering patterns on the Sphinx as the result of heavy rainfall, exposure to heavy rainfall for thousands of years. You have to go back to the Younger Dryas to get that kind of heavy rainfall in Giza, hence the notion that the Sphinx geologically, whatever else we may say about it, is 12,000 plus years old. And it was courageous of Robert to do that. He put his own career in jeopardy, just like anybody who sticks their neck out in this field does. He put his own career in jeopardy by standing up for a much older Sphinx, and I just hugely respect him for doing that.
I also thought it was really fascinating that he showed images, cropped images, of this water erosion to other geologists. They all agreed it was water erosion until they figured out where it was.
There you go.
And they were like, I'm not signing off on that.
That's right.
Because it's just too controversial.
Yeah, they circle the wagons at a certain point and
go after your career.
Yeah. Most unfortunately.
Well, we are very fortunate that you're out there, buddy.
Thank you.
We really are.
Thank you.
I love your show. I love you. You're always fun to talk to.
Can I say
Appreciate you very much.
A couple of things about the show?
Sure, please.
First of all, thank you to the viewers of Season 1 of Ancient Apocalypse. And I hope you'll enjoy Season 2. I hope we're bringing really important new information to the table. And a special request, if you do like it, please give it a thumbs up on Netflix. Season 2 is all about the Americas. Secondly, I will be doing a speaking event in the US. It'll be the only speaking event that I do in 2025. And that's going to be in Sedona, 19th and 20th of April 2025.
That's a good place for it, all those freaks.
Yeah. 19th and 20th of April 2025, and it's going to be called The Fight for the Past, because I believe that's what's going on here. So I hope that people will enjoy the show and express that enjoyment. That would be really, really helpful.
I know they will.
And the final thing I want to say is thank you to Keanu Reeves. Thank you to Keanu Reeves for joining me on the show. Keanu reached out to me some years ago because he's making this incredible comic book series called Berserker, B-R-Z-R-K-R, about an immortal warrior who's born 80,000 years ago but has the power of a god and cannot be killed. And back, I think, in at least 2 years ago, Keanu reached out to me for some advice, some historical advice on where in the world could such an individual have been born 80,000 years ago. And we talked about that, and we exchanged emails, and then we had some nice Zoom conversations together.
That's cool.
And I sensed that this is a very open-minded, very curious, very interesting person. So when we were doing Season 2, I did ask him, would you join me and speak about this and speak about the curiosity of the past? And he knew what he was up against. Actually, just before Keanu and I spent a day together filming for season 2 of Ancient Apocalypse, he'd watched the debate between me and Flint Dibble. He knew what he was facing getting into this, but he had, again, the courage and the integrity to stand up, to stand by me in that story, and I'm enormously grateful to him for doing that. And I found along the way, I suspected it when we knew each other just by Zoom and by email, I found along the way what an incredible gentleman Keanu Reeves is, how kind-hearted he is, how humble he is, how he turned up for the shoot carrying his own baggage. He's just a gem of a human being, and he radiates kindness and decency and care and love towards others, and I feel privileged to have had the opportunity to get to know him, and I hope
me, please.
will continue to cross in the future.
That's awesome.
Above all, I'm grateful to him. for
Shout
being
out to
part of the show.
Keanu. Seems like an awesome guy.
He's an awesome guy. He's everything that people say about Keanu is right. He's a great guy.
There he is. The two of you together.
Yep, yep.
All right, Graham. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Bye, outside.
I think this is the last run for now. Use the washroom and then we're gonna lift weights, I think. I think that's what we're gonna want to do. Whatever. Whatever. So let's run. Thank you everyone for being here. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Mike 1109, Toda Bro, Truer Faith, Scotty AV. Baron Bagcock. Say the curse.